Sustainable Development, Smart Growth, AB 32, and all its nasty regulations. And Agenda 21, we're going to talk about that tonight too. So you're going to get quite an education, and we just thank you all for coming and being open-minded enough to listen to this. I think you're going to go away with a lot more information than you ever dreamed. In the meantime, I want to thank our co-sponsors, which is Americans for Prosperity, Citizens for Accountable Government, and the Elise Richmond Radio Show. The Palm Springs Patriots Coalition is your host. I'm Christina Mikas, the founder and leader, and we want to welcome all of you. At this time, we're going to stand for the pledge, and I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I would like to introduce our moderator tonight, David Spady from Americans for Prosperity and Salem Communications. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Well, we had a terrific session this afternoon, and if you weren't here and would like to see it, or if you were here and would like to see it again, it is available online already via podcast at lightonthedesert.org. So the one we're having now will be there as well later on this evening. We're going to hear tonight a lot about sustainability, and the roots of sustainability go back to Earth Day and beyond, as you'll hear from some of our speakers, but where the blueprint for what we're going to be talking about tonight when it comes to AB 32 and a lot of what we see going on locally stems from a conference in Rio where they came up with this concept of Agenda 21. And Agenda 21 refers to an agenda for the 21st century, and those who were involved in this conference in Rio were given this blueprint and tasked with taking this out globally and specifically into their local communities. So we've seen the spread of this. We've seen it here in California in the form of AB 32, and we've seen pieces of it being implemented all across the state and our local communities. The interesting thing about it, though, is that now that we're beginning to see some of it being implemented here, there's a lot of politicians that are beginning to recognize it and push back, including Ted Cruz, a candidate for Senate in Texas, who sent us a rather lengthy letter outlining his opposition to Agenda 21 and recognizing it for the threat that it is to, from a property rights standpoint, from a personal liberty standpoint, and from an economic standpoint. The National Republican Committee, just in January, passed a lengthy resolution. In fact, it's worth reading if you want to look it up online, going through point by point all the problems with Agenda 21 and the whole sustainability movement. And by the way, that was 1992 when that passed, and the 20-year anniversary is this year, and now they're going to say, okay, what have we learned over what we accomplished the last 20 years, and now how can we take this forward with all the new technologies and what we can build upon? And that, to me, is almost more frightening than what we had 20 years ago. I was recently shown a book that is from 1992 called Rescue Mission, Planet Earth, a children's edition of Agenda 21. In the front end of this, there's a letter from Kofi Annan, who was then Secretary General, and it's a frightening, book as you go through it from a child's standpoint. Spit Roasted Planet, Chainsaw Massacre, talking about cutting trees down, Vanishing Mountains, Problem Family, Some for All, Sea of Troubles, Rivers of Shame, and there's a section on population growth in here called the Population Bomb, where they quote Paul Simon saying, every time a child is born, the earth groans. So you're giving this to kids with the idea that the earth groaned when they were born. At the tail end of it, which is sort of telling, this is the children's version, not the official one that passed, they have a section called Black Holes in Agenda 21 where they talk about all the things that weren't in there that they hope should be in the next one, that include things about discrimination, nationalism, refugees, war, and militarism. So it goes on and on. You're going to hear about a lot of sustainability things that are happening in this country, but we want you to be informed, and we want you to take what you're hearing tonight and go do something about it. It's one thing to sit here and be informed about it. It's another thing to put the boots on the ground and go do something. And that was one of the reasons why I got involved with the group Americans for Prosperity, because it wasn't another think tank. It was a group that actually got engaged at the local level to try to change things and not just hear about them and complain about them. So we're hoping that you guys will do the same and get engaged on these issues. Our first speaker tonight is going to be the Menifee City Council Mayor, former mayor, current councilman, Wallace Egerton. And Wally has been a stockbroker and a university professor on political science and a public administrator for over 20 years. His knowledge of local planning and development issues has served him on the Long Beach City Council for 17 years and on the Menifee City Council since 2008. So he has a long background dealing with this issue and how it's changed over his time in office. So welcome, Wally, or Wallace.
Well, thank you, David and Christine, and I want to thank the Patriots Coalition for inviting me here this evening, and all the other coalitions that are part of this program. And an evaluation of the subject matter of the sustainability development, and I'm a little bit newer to appreciating what this is all about. I believe the focus here today is on the role of local government as viewed by an international council with the acronym of ICLA, which I understand stands for icky. But I have been given a softball on this particular panel. My job is to try to place this movement in some historical and constitutional perspective as we try to understand why the Patriots Coalition and all these other coalitions are so alarmed by the sustainability movement. And indeed, as you sit here tonight, when you consider it's really quite complex and deeper than that, as you feel the anger, the frustration, the sense of discontent that's kind of sweeping across our country. The idea of sustainability through development was more recently, as David pointed out, identified through Assembly Bill 32, and it originated in the 1900s within the United Nations as Agenda 21. It is a world view ideology that assumes mankind is in danger and that the sustainability of the human race as we know it depends upon how we deal with the Earth's environment and how we as governments influence the behavior of humans in order to achieve that goal. It is a top-down strategy, and while emphasizing local planning, the ultimate authority comes from central control. It is in the final analysis the eventual culmination of central control with its inherent deference to the state as opposed to the individual that has the opposition of this ideology so alarmed. Most would agree that this movement, which began with the United Nations, was based on the very best intentions. But other national and international ideologies emphasizing central control and the nation state over the individual have ended up quite tragically. The most notable of those, of course, would be Hegel and Marx and communism, which emanated from the left political side. And then you can see Nietzsche and fascism emanating from the right political spectrum. But the writer Hannah Arendt in her nonfiction work on totalitarianism points out that both of these left and right movements were predicated on the equality of conditions of the masses. And that has been the method of central control, whether you're talking about the pharaohs or dictators or any time in history. This movement of sustainability is not about equality of opportunity, which is a democratic idea, but rather it is concerned about the equality and condition of the masses. And that is in essence a totalitarian idea. This idea of sustainability may appear innocent enough and perhaps innocuous in its present state, but it has the virulent seeds of oppression within its context, and its allure is a guarantee of more security, more predictability, but its price tag comes with your individuality surrendered and much of your freedoms surrendered. It is antithetical to the thoughts of our constitutional founding fathers, and Americans need to be made aware that the asking price is far too high. It is our freedom. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the philosopher, cautioned us about putting too much emphasis on security. He said, if all you want is security, you can find security in a dungeon. So there are other things that we hopefully aspire to. In 1949, George Orwell wrote, as you know, that prophetic nightmarish vision of the world, and it became a classic novel. And Orwell had been a socialist in Spain. He was fighting against the fascists. He was a socialist. And in the end, he became disenchanted with both sides, both the fascist and the socialist. And he was concerned, in his book, he reminded us that what they're really after is our mind. And a lot of textbooks will, when they write about totalitarianism, they will tell you that totalitarianism means the total control of the culture and the politics of a society or a country. That is not the essence of what totalitarianism means. That word total in totalitarianism means that that system is after the totalitarian, or after the totality of you. It is after the total individual. It is not enough for you to yield to the laws. It is not enough for you to say, I'll do what you ask me to do. They are deeply concerned about how you think. And that is part of totalitarianism. Hannah Arendt, in her non-fictional book, Not Totalitarianism, would point this out. And she would point out that you have to be concerned because in the beginning, these movements seem rather innocuous. But eventually, they want to put the state above everything, including the family, including the church, or whatever other concerns you might have. Taking a look now at the Declaration of Independence and getting a feel a little bit of how our founding fathers might have looked at this sustainability. Lord Acton, who came, by the way, later than our Constitution, would remind us that power tends to corrupt and that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the greater the centralization of the government, the greater the power. Most human beings have accepted a submissive, centralized government since we've had nation states. We have had great thinkers who've come before us who've helped us break that sense of submission to the state. One of these was John Locke, that 17th century philosopher who talked about life, liberty, and property, and that was paraphrased by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When asked, asking John Locke, when asked if he was loyal to his king, he said, I am loyal to my king as long as my king is loyal to me. And for that, John Locke had to flee England for his life. The Declaration of Independence of 1774 was a radical document when it was written. And you should remember that as you sit here tonight, it is a radical document. It will always be a radical document. The core thesis was that you, the individual, matter, and that no king or king should have absolute power. If a king or a government abuses their power by not respecting your inherent rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, you have the right, indeed you have the obligation, to overthrow that government, and if necessary, with violent force. Jefferson was no woos. The Constitutional Convention, when you look at that, it's quite different. The Constitution is a conservative document. It was conservative then, it is conservative now. It was written, as you know, in 1787. The saddest part of the United States Constitution is that we have not followed it. The quintessential message of the Founding Fathers was that you should have a decentralized government with local control. The states, not the national government, would make the decisions about most things, including the police powers and their local economies. The national or central government was not to be trusted. It was to be divided into 3 branches of government as checks and balances against the potential of any attempt at the concentration of power. All power given the national government was delegated power from the states, and any power not delegated or enumerated in that Constitution was reserved to the states. Now, if you look at the Bill of Rights, and you see where it came from, because the distrust of a potentially strong central government was so pervasive among the delegates, and even more so among the general population, that it was understood that even before ratification of the Constitutional Convention's efforts, that certain amendments would be immediately passed following that ratification. And by the way, most of you probably have been to college. Most of those textbooks are liberal. Most of them adhere or admire centralized control, and many of the textbooks will tell you that our Founding Fathers wanted stronger, not stronger, that they did, but that they wanted strong central government. They did not. And if anybody wants to follow up in discussion to understand why that's my point, I'd be happy to elaborate. Those were our first 10 amendments, those first amendments that had been anticipated, and they are our Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was to protect the individual from any abuse from the central government, and in addition use that Bill of Rights to build a fence around that little potential monster and see that it did not grow into a Frankenstein. You were to be loyal to your country, but never, never trust your government, consisting of those elected officials and bureaucrats who have an inclination to want to concentrate power at the potential cost of the citizens' freedom. Now, when you look at the government today and where we are, it is not the government intended by your Founding Fathers. The government that we have today is not a reflection of that Constitution. And so the question is, why? Why not? Because I will point out 4 reasons why our nation has morphed into a government that was not intended by our Founding Fathers, and briefly discuss 3 of them. The first reason is the growth of population. It complicates governance, but it's not the primary reason we're in the position we are today, where many people would consider the sustainability issue and say, ho hum, what's the big deal? The other 3 are judicial review, grants and aid, and the interpretation of the courts of the 14th Amendment. Let's take a look at judicial review. There is no mention whatsoever of judicial review in our Constitution. It is something that has evolved over time without a vote and has dramatically taken away the right of Americans to vote. The U.S. Constitution is brief. It's a rather simple document made up of 7 articles and 27 amendments. The first 10 amendments are the Bill of Rights, which is often considered of one piece with the original Constitution, and this, of course, was anticipated. The bulk of the Constitution consists of Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3. Article 1 was the primary concern It was the priority. That's why it's called Article 1. It concerns the legislative body. It's where the Founding Fathers wanted the bulk of the power to reside. Why? Because you had access to it, because you could vote for them, you could vote against them, you could throw them out of office. They wanted to make sure that you could get at them. And Article 1, and particularly Section 8 of Article 1, where they talk about the powers of Congress, very clearly tells you what our Founding Fathers intended for our government. The Article 2 concerns the executive branch, or the president, and it is of great significance, but it is clearly dependent upon the legislative branch to be functional. Since this branch is headed by one man, they did not wish to take any chance that he might become a king. By the way, there were exceptions to the dominant view of decentralized control at the Constitutional Convention, Alexander Hamilton being the most notable, but that view was in a minority. Article 3 was much shorter, and it is about our courts. The Supreme Court would be the final appellate court and would usually handle rather esoteric matters, usually involving ordinary people. For example, it would handle matters of diverse citizenship between nations and our individual states and conflicts between states and national governments. One of its primary tasks was to act as a check against the possibility of the growth in power of the other two branches of government. Again, the Founding Fathers were clearly sending a message: don't trust government. Be loyal to your country, which is different than the people who sit in your government. Indeed, the duties of the court were so limited that the first two Chief Justices quit because they said they had more important things to do. The potential thorn in this innocuous appearing Article 3 was described by Yates, who was a delegate at the convention and himself Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the state of New York. He pointed out that the arbiter in any dispute over the U.S. Supreme Court would be determined by the court itself, which in fact it should be judged by the legislative body, which in turn was answerable to the people at the ballot box. Yates went on to say that without any bad intentions, the court could evolve into the most powerful and independent judicial body ever created under the sun. While highly respected, the delegates did not heed Yates' warning. And consequently, as you sit here tonight, the United States Supreme Court is the most powerful, independent court ever created under the sun. And it would have been anathema to our Founding Fathers if they could be here tonight and see the position of our court vis-a-vis what their plan was for you. As you sit here tonight, the Founding Fathers would point out that this court has and can right over the top of both minorities and majorities. It is an undemocratic body that imposes its centralized power on all Americans by 5 of 9 unelected and unselected justices who are unknown to the average American and answer to nobody. Much of what Americans must answer for today has not been determined by an elected legislative body, as intended by our Founding Fathers, but rather by an unelected court, which is accountable to no one. Thomas Jefferson would admonish you to change that. It was not intended that the court discuss personal matters, such as abortion and contraceptives and prayer in school. That was not intended at all for that great court. That came later. true evolution. A second reason for the increase of the centralization of our government is grants and aid. Grants and aid have allowed our central government a rationale for collecting more and more taxes in order to provide most of what our founding fathers intended that we provide for ourselves locally in our states, in our counties, and in our towns. Grants suck away the ability to make local decisions where the people live and transfers it to faraway bureaucrats who cannot understand our way of life and do not care. Again, the founders of our Constitution knew that when you sacrifice local control, you give up much of your individuality. A slow evolution towards centralization can be insidious, and a good example might be a little test I give my students, and that's in reference to fiscal policy. When you're talking about, let us say, a recession or depression, and we talk about what some people refer to as Keynesian economics. You don't have to refer to Keynesian economics, it's just fiscal policy. What you usually use in fiscal policy is a combination of trying to provide more government spending and lowering taxes. But in a hypothetical example, let us say that you have a recession and that you can use either the instrument of greater government spending or lowering taxes. And let us say that regardless of which one of those instruments you use, you reach the same goal. Indeed, you reach the same positive goal. You reach the same level of employment. You reach the same desired level of GDP, the gross domestic product. So the question is, if you reach the same goal, the same desirable goal, the same GDP, and the same level of employment, whether you increase government spending or whether you decrease taxes, what difference does it make? It makes a huge difference. Because when you have government spending make that determination, it is the government that makes the decision of how, what, when, why happens. When it is a lowering of your taxes that makes the determination of that GDP and employment, it will be you. It will be you, the citizen, who makes that determination. And the other issue, and the last issue, would be the 14th Amendment. And I would simply point out there that what happened is that the courts decided tragically, using the 14th Amendment primarily and other amendments as well, to decide that the Bill of Rights, which was until the 1920s, clearly meant to only put a fence around the national government, the central government. But the courts have chosen to chip away at that Bill of Rights, and now they wrap it around the states, so that now the national government, as an instrument of the Supreme Court, as an instrument of the national government, will interpret our local laws. And that's how they got into such personal things as your flag, and into contraception, and into school prayer. That is how that occurred, and they've gone through almost the entire Bill of Rights. One of the few that still stands is the Second Amendment. They haven't been able to break that down yet, but they're working on it. And so in conclusion, I would simply tell you, if Madison, if Hamilton, if Jay were here tonight and they were listening to a presentation on sustainability, the development, this program that you're concerned about, they would be vehement and they would simply say, for your freedom, for your country, for yourself, don't do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Wally. Our next speaker is somebody who's been very involved in the planning issues with, I think, 20 different municipalities around Southern California. He's a municipal planning engineer, and he's going to give his perspective from the standpoint of somebody who's actually in the implementation side of this. Please welcome Robert Righetti.
It's hard to follow up that speech. That was pretty informative. I would just say that, you know, the quote that I have here is probably going to summarize pretty much what he said there, that if we're going to give up our liberties for a little bit of security, then we'd have neither liberty nor safety. And that was the summation of Benjamin Franklin. I'd like you to look at this chart. Tell me what you think about this. This is, I went to a meeting basically where one of the local conservancies was giving a talk about environmentalism and so on, and they had this list on invasive species. And one of the things that struck me was something that appeared on this chart. That's us. Where are the invasive species? The sad part about sustainable development and about environmentalism is that they view humanity as an invasive species. That's a mindset that is basically, it's aimed at destroying everything that we stand for. It's not about preserving us as a species. It's about quarantining us, about pushing us aside into a small little area so that we can be controlled and we're not going to impact the rest of the planet. It's about where you put your priorities in life. And that's basically what summarizes the problem that we're up against, is that we're up against people, a world organization essentially, that views humanity as an invasive species. This is a quote from the American Planning Association's Handbook for Planners. One of the things it notes is that the work of doing or implementing sustainability and sustainable development has to fall on the shoulders of planners, scientists, and community activists. And you might notice at the bottom, it says that with increasing success, proponents of fundamental change are helping to create communities of social and economic structures that are long-lasting on both local and global scales. Worldwide, planners and environmentalists and community activists are taking important steps to advance a concept called sustainability. These are the people who are in the trenches. It's not about those guys in the United Nations. It's not about those people in the White House. It's about the people who are in the trenches implementing this stuff, just like the guys who were marching the Jews into the ovens. If those men had not been there to march those people into the ovens, it wouldn't have mattered what Hitler said. They wouldn't have gone into the ovens. Someone had to do the work. And my problem with the industry that I've been involved with for many, many years is that we have become the useful idiots for a group of people who think I'm an invasive species. The interesting thing, too, is that they recognize that this isn't going to succeed unless we re-educate the entire populace. This is also out of that same manual. Education is critical to the success of any sustainable development program. And so they know that in order to make this thing happen, they have to re-educate you. As I had mentioned earlier in the afternoon program, we don't have to worry about being locked up in re-education camps. We're in it. No prisoners, no bars, none of that stuff. We're simply being re-educated by the slow process of media, the newspapers, movies, the Disney Channel, music, you name it. That's how we're being re-educated. And we're slowly evolving into what they want us to be. Again, as was pointed out by Wally, it's about a focus on outcome. They're more concerned about controlling the outcome of people and controlling how people are equitably distributed as far as their incomes and their race and their mix and all that stuff. They want to control all that. Well, the big question is why? Well, because we're an invasive species. We need to be quarantined. We need to be huddled together and kind of put in their little cubicles and everything so that we can be controlled. This little paragraph was rather interesting. Now, this is out of their handbook for planners as well, and if you notice that little deal on the bottom there about social equity, ecological integrity, and economic prosperity, looks just like the same symbol that's used for Agenda 21. And this is perpetuated essentially through the American Planners Association. But this statement here basically says, for some, sustainability can be achieved by living in compact communities, using public transit, minimizing energy consumption, and recycling waste. For others, it conjures up images of communal living in a small, organic, farm-oriented community with a strong sense of community and surrounded by wide open spaces. Those wide open spaces are the property that we used to occupy. But because we're an invasive species, we need to be put into these little quarantined communities where basically we're in these high-density developments with high-speed rail to connect us to the other node. That's the idea. And if you really analyze what's going on with the whole planning movement, it's about taking all of us basically who live out in these sprawled areas. That's why they keep making it seem like you're an evil thing to be a part of the sprawl. But to take us out of the rural communities where you have real culture, where you have neighbors, where people know each other, and huddle you into these tight little communities with a small carbon footprint and no impact. Get you out of your car, put you on a bicycle or on a skateboard or whatever, but interconnect everybody so that you can go to work downstairs in the grocery store or whatever it is that you live above. That's the idea. So it means that now they're pushing us to come to grips with our so-called limitations. Well, what are the limitations? It's land ownership and the rights of private property. That's the target, because that's what prohibits them from really implementing sustainable development and its maximum. As long as people own property and as long as they have rights, they can't do what they want to do. And so they break you down, and they break you down through the planning process. If you go in and submit your application for a development. In fact, I worked on a project in one of the communities near the beach where they had, it was a parcel essentially of around, I'd say probably about 300 acres. But by the time the California Coastal Commission got done with it, it was down to about 40. Because of all of the things that they designated that they couldn't build on. Well, what happened to that guy's property rights? Well, there was nobody there to defend him except for his attorneys and the legal and the experts that he hired. But there were busloads of environmental people who were brought in from all over the country to oppose that project. And there were websites that were opposing that project. Why? Because of this concept. They were buying into the idea that this guy's an invasive species. And the mindset that planners have is that, you know, this is the enemy. I'm working against this guy. But that's one of the things that we have to fight against, that we have to start working back against, because that shouldn't be it. We should be reaching back to those founding principles that made this country great. Again, it's about re-education. And this comes up over and over again when you go through the handbooks and the manuals and the other things that are put out by the different planning organizations. You can go into the bookstores and you look into the ecology section, and it's just row after row of books about the end of the world, about how things are going to fall apart, the earth is going to burn up, the earth is going to freeze, the animals are all going to go away, all that stuff. But it's the same as the literature over the years of all the millennialist groups that said that the end of the world is coming. It's the same rationale. John Ehrlich, who had his book on the population bomb, he's rewritten that thing so many times that it's getting to be where, I mean, what's the point? Because every time he writes it, it's wrong. But he still keeps getting printed. Again, it's about changing our views on things. So that, as it points out here, that it's going to be necessary for us to have that re-education process at the local, national, and global level. This is not just something that's happened in your local community, but it's all over the world. But that re-education process is going on. Now, this is something that you'll find interesting. Back in 1984, there was a very active group called the Planners Network. Planners Network was basically planners that worked in various communities and so on. However, this was a group of planners who were socialist. You'll notice in the second paragraph here, and this is taken from the Planners Network newsletter, that we believe that planning should be a tool for allocating resources and developing the environment to eliminate the great inequalities of wealth and power in our society. That's sustainable development. And when you go to the third paragraph, we oppose the economic structure of our society which values profit and property rights over human rights and needs. These folks worked very hard to get on the boards and worked very hard to rise up in the planning regimes across this country, and took very prominent positions in organizations like the American Planning Association, who certify planners that work all across this country. And so these ideals have been seeded in, and it reflects itself in the way that we see things executed in our projects and in our administration of our cities. It's not just the guys who are passing the legislation, because someone has to implement it. Someone has to put it into place. Here's an interesting guy, E.F. Schumacher. Schumacher wrote a book called Small is Beautiful. And his idea was, you know what? We need to have an appropriate technology that's ecologically suitable and doesn't impact things, and it takes advantage of all the manpower and everything. So his idea was that if you need to dig a hole, a big hole, don't go get a backhoe. Get 25 guys with shovels and put them to work, because that creates jobs. And he wrote a whole bunch of books that, in fact, at one point, I believe it was 1976, or no, that's wrong, it should be 1977 up there when he died. But in 1976, yeah, he didn't live very long. He was 6 years old when he wrote his books. As a typo. But in 1976, he was honored by Congress for his work, and they bought into this stuff. And you can find this stuff online. Who's one of his biggest adherents, one of his biggest followers? I'd like to introduce you to him. He's currently in charge here in the state of California. But he was one of his biggest followers. And he was the first time he came around, the first time he was governor. Still is. This website is an organization that a lot of communities have bought into. Planners are involved in it, communities are involved in it. Some cities have departments that are essentially operating under this aegis and basically are implementing the programs that this organization pays for. And they pay for the positions in those cities. Why are they doing that? Because they need those planners, they need those people to implement these programs. They're investing in that, in the success of sustainable development, because they want it that bad. And they'll provide the funding to create those departments. This fellow wrote an interesting book called The European Dream. He wrote this back in 2004. One of the focuses of his book was that Europe was going to succeed and be the European dream, and the American dream would disappear because of sustainable development. My question is how's it working now? It's only been, 8 years? And it's almost on fire. So, you know, all of these folks are out there trying to re-educate people, but we shouldn't be paying attention to that. We should be fighting back and trying to do something different, pushing the founding fathers and the founding documents that we had. So essentially, this is the way we should look at it. Now, Ayn Rand, for all the faults and everything else that she had, she did get some things right. And her point was that the ecology movement is a political fraud. Ecologists predict universal doom and demand totalitarian power on the basis of arbitrary hypotheses. And I don't know how many times I have reviewed environmental documents where the word may is used over and over and over again. They will not use the word will, because they know that the minute they do that, they're liable for their statements. And so they will have findings in those documents that basically say, well, if you put this in here, the birds may fly away, or these animals may die, or these weeds may perish. But they never say will, because they don't know. It's all about conjecture. It's all about modeling, and it's about statistics, and statistics and modeling can lie as much as it can tell you the truth. So it becomes a political tool and a publicity movement to impose their wisdom by force on the rest of mankind. And that's what it's about. And that's what we're seeing today. Thank you.
Our next speaker is John Petty, who's a Riverside County Commissioner, Planning Commissioner, and he has 10 years of experience as a Planning Commissioner for the 3rd Supervisorial District in Riverside. Please welcome John Petty.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. It was great that Wally kind of took us from 10,000 feet in the historical perspective. Bob followed up with some great real-world analysis, and I'm going to try and even bring it a little closer. I really didn't have anything prepared tonight. I was asked to come and speak and kind of give some of the benefit of my experience on the County Planning Commission. Riverside County, as probably many of you know, has been the fastest growing county in the state of California. For many years now. It was actually in 2006, I think the 4th fastest growing county in the entire United States. I was appointed in January of 1997, and I've been on, for the most part, pretty much solid since then. So I have seen, you know, a huge wave of development and been really in the trenches for many, many years. The other thing that I do is real estate development. So I have seen this from both sides of the counter. What's fascinating to me is how this concept of sustainability and smart growth has, as Bob very adequately and adroitly mentioned, is pervaded itself from the planners that are implementing these plans on a day-to-day basis. It's interesting that after you have sat through 10 or 15 seminars or presentations by the experts that come in and want to convince you that smart growth and sustainability is the wave of the future and that we have to do this, you start saying to yourself, you know, what are they not seeing, or what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? Because if you sit through enough of these, you get the impression that not only have they completely consumed the Kool-Aid, but they're now pouring it to everybody that they can pour it to. And it's amazing to me that, you know, when we have the inevitable follow-up questions at the end of these presentations, and I'm you know, not bashful about, you know, asking some questions. And my usual comment is, especially with the smart growth people and the high density communities, is, okay, do you have anything that empirically shows that dense development reduces all of the impacts that you say it reduces? Well, no, we really don't. And I say, can you demonstrate that by implementing this high density development that you're not going to exacerbate the same kinds of impacts that you're saying that you will reduce? And they have no answer for that, because really what they are doing, in my opinion, and I think the opinions of others, is they are doing social engineering via land planning. This is an anti-automobile, an anti, just, you know the list. And, you know, it doesn't take long to figure that out. In 2003, the County of Riverside updated its general plan. We spent close to $20 million in the process. We held hearings after hearings after hearings. And the cornerstone of the county's general plan update was the concept of community centers. Now, most people think of community centers. In fact, I had a prominent county supervisor tell me or ask me after, you know, many public hearings, you know, why do we need these community centers? Don't we have, you know, enough places for kids to play basketball and all of that? And when he didn't realize that the concept of community center were these very high density developments. They were wanting to go vertical. And what fascinated me was in the 3rd supervisorial district where I'm from, and that area is everything from Idlewild to Beaumont Banning down to Temecula out to the Paris area, so it's a very large district. It's seen a lot of growth. We had what we called the purple blobs on the maps. Covering all and these purple blobs were designated, and the only way they were going to be able to implement it was through eminent domain. And as Bob has mentioned, and Wally has mentioned, if you look at this, not with a conspiracy theory, but from a real world vision of how things work on the ground, that's the only way that the movement is going to be implemented. From a top-down, centralized, we know best, we're going to social engineer you all to death, and we're going to have you promptly at your train station as after you have walked to the latte place, and you're going to be happy commuting via rail however long it takes to this job that you're going to go to, and then you're going to come back and do the same thing over and over again. And it's unfortunate because, and I'm glad that there was a more than just a gripe session here, but there's going to be a call to arms, I hope, because most people don't understand what this movement is all about. And who, when the average person looks at this, what could be wrong with sustainability? What could be wrong with smart growth? And it's something that I've always come back to. It's always the law of unintended consequences. And when Bob was mentioning using this quote, I immediately jotted down that most of the planners that I come in contact with, I think, can basically sum up their philosophy of life and their philosophy of planning with the statement, I love humanity, it's people that really bother me. And I find that, more and more and more as I'm dealing with these environmental issues. On the subject of AB 32, which is, I kind of want to bring it back to what we're here today to talk in specifics. The other thing that is very frustrating to me, both from a planning side and reviewing plans, as well as, again, generating plans to be reviewed, is that we are now in a never land world of generating very expensive reports that mean absolutely nothing to anybody, that cost thousands of dollars, that one or two people are going to look at and say, well, they've complied with this, and put it in a drawer, and that's it. If anybody here knows anything about a greenhouse gas analysis, part of an environmental impact report, you will know that for the most part it is a complete waste of time and money. There is no baseline to compare any of these greenhouse gas emissions to. You basically fit the numbers to make them work, and it's very frustrating to anybody that's trying to make any kind of decisions on a plan to look at a report and say, all right, well, what are we really trying to get at here? Are we all just so, blinded now and have relegated ourselves to being these little automatons that just say, okay, we get this edict from Sacramento that we have to do this, that we're going to do it. We all know, this is all, it's really come to the point where we're all just kind of wink, 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 wink. Okay, we've done the greenhouse gas report. Poor guy spent $20,000 and took an extra 4 months to get it generated, and it means nothing. That's what the average person doesn't realize. And I have, talked to leaders of the Building Industry Association and others that say, and I've said, guys, when are you going to pony up the dough to let people know how much nonsense is involved in what we do here? Because the average person doesn't have a clue. So if there is a call to action tonight, I hope it is that, people start insisting on knowing where their gas tax dollars go, where they're, you know, if we start building new homes again, where the price of these homes really come down in terms of the amount of government regulation that is just nonsensical that goes into the price of an average home or average commercial development. And I thought I'd close with one other example of something that I just thought is just, you know, something that, you know, you can't really dream these things up. I had the opportunity to spend some time with some folks from Texas recently, and they came out to California and were asking, they were in the development business. And, you know, they had heard about the over-regulations in California, and they said, well, so what do you have to go through? You know, what's it like pulling building permits and getting plans approved? And I started giving them, you know, a typical case. And they looked at me like that I was making this stuff up. And you don't realize how absurd the whole thing has gotten until you try to explain it to somebody who doesn't have a clue. And then, I mean, halfway through, I'm thinking to myself, because I can see the look on their face, and I'm explaining this, and I stopped for a second, and I said, this must sound very bizarre to you, doesn't it? And they just said, yeah, you know, you're not making this stuff up, right? And I said, no. And that's how, I guess, how far we've come here in California, is that, you know, we don't think enough. We've accepted it. We've almost drunk the Kool-Aid ourselves, because as type A, developer type, builder type people, you know, we're focused on the result. And it's gotten to the point where we don't care what it takes to get us there. If we have to do all these nonsensical things, okay, fine, we'll do it. But the time for that is over. Because what happens is, it leads to this unintended consequence of people not understanding what the next step is, whether that's, you know, eminent domain to create this governmental vision, or the implementation of some kind of a top-down program where Sacramento, and it's certainly been suggested more than once, is going to get involved in our local planning efforts, because they don't see us, you know, accepting everything that they're going to do, no matter what they do. And in terms of incentivizing local governments to do what they want us to do, there's still this pushback, and it comes from people like us, basically, who are saying, time out, this isn't right. And I think what they are starting to figure out is that the only way they're going to make this work is by either tying the implementations of these plans to our share of gas taxes or our share of some other kind of taxes, because it's just something that is, pardon the pun, unsustainable. The fantasy that they have is unsustainable, and I think they know it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next guest is a landscape architect who specializes in EPA forestry and BLM processing, and she's going to talk about some real-world examples of how AB 32, SB 375, and green growth affect people. Please welcome Darcy Brandon.
Good evening. Thank you for coming this evening. Like he said, I am a landscape architect, and I've been practicing in California for about 25 years. And over this time, I've noticed more and more regulations being implemented, usually under the banner of health, safety, and welfare. Oh, I've got my... Okay, thanks. So I'm going to talk about implementing Agenda 21 through EPA regulations. So what is the big deal with these regulations? On the surface, sustainable development is promoted and marketed as a positive method of developing land. However, it's actually about taking control of your private property and turning it into publicly controlled property. So our country was founded, like we heard, on private property rights, and Agenda 21 is the antithesis to that philosophy. Sustainable development, smart growth, etc., are steeped in the environmental movement of the 60s and 70s. And our society has shifted from its original Judeo-Christian basis, where we are commanded by God to be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Now contrast that with the humanistic environmental religion, where Gaians teach that the earth goddess, or Mother Earth, must be protected from destructive human activity. It is this belief that fuels the environmental movement, sustainable development, and a global push for the return of industrialized nations to a more primitive way of life. Many prominent environmental leaders, politicians, scientists, and religious leaders profess a literal belief in Gaia, or the Earth Goddess. So now I want to take you on a very quick history lesson of the environmental movement. So this will be a quick lesson. And it started in around 1962 with Rachel Carson's book, The Silent Spring, where she exposed the detrimental effects of DDT. 1968, we had the Club of Rome formed. In 1970, we had the first Earth Day. The EPA was established under President Nixon, and the Clean Air Act was passed. In 1972, the Clean Water Act was passed, and the first UN Conference on the Environment was held. And the Club of Rome released the first book here, The Limits to Growth. And basically what this can be summarized is, as overpopulation will result in sudden and uncontrollable decline of the environment, and environmental sustainability was coined. In 1974, the Club of Rome released the second book, Mankind at the Turning Point, which states that the world is facing overpopulation, food shortages, non-renewable resource depletion, environmental degradation, and poor governance. And in this book, it states that the world has cancer, and the cancer is man. We had the oil embargo in 1974. In 1982, the environmental justice movement began, and Clinton signed an executive order in 1994 dealing with environmental justice. In 1987, the EPA reported that climate change is the biggest environmental threat. In 1992, we had the release of Agenda 21 at the Rio Earth Summit. The Club of Rome put out another document entitled The First Global Revolution, The Time to Act Had Run Out. And in this publication, they stated, in searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill nicely. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself. In 1993, President Clinton put out this publication, Sustainable America, A New Consensus. 97, Clinton signed the federal actions in the Lake Tahoe region, or Keep Tahoe Blue. In 2002, we had the World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, South Africa. In 2006, An Inconvenient Truth came out, Al Gore's film and book. 2007, the Supreme Court rules that CO2 and other greenhouse gases are pollutants. Now, do you recall your fourth grade biology lesson where they taught you that we exhale carbon dioxide and plants take that in, use it for photosynthesis, and their output is oxygen, and it's a cycle that just keeps going? So, yeah, I don't quite understand that one, but anyway. 2009, EPA makes the official finding that greenhouse gases are a major air pollutant and subject to the Clean Air Act. So how are these regulations being used? Here we have, and I talked about this afternoon, the Stormwater Best Management Practices with the Clean Water Act. And this ties into Agenda 21, and again, this is Agenda 21, 300 pages, 40 chapters that deals with pretty much every aspect of your life. And so the Clean Water Act ties into Section 2, Chapter 18, Protection of the Quality and Supply of Freshwater Resources. Now, originally, the Clean Water Act was instituted as a point source pollutant bill to prevent chemicals and whatnot from being released into waterways. It has morphed from there to now regulate entire watersheds. And you'll hear a lot about best management practices. In the landscape industry, we have to prevent stormwater runoff from projects, but it's also in your homes, and you'll know it as the high efficiency washers or your low flow toilets. And then also there are the water permitting regulations, and in California there are permit requirements for stormwater, and they are proposing that new permits will increase the cost of permitting by 3 times of what it is currently. And then we have the Endangered Species Act, and I showed you these this afternoon. Here we have the Delta smelt. The Endangered Species Act was passed in 1973 to prevent the extinction of animals and plants that are drastically declining and exist in extremely low numbers. And this begs the question, what is more important, plants and animals or human life and sustenance? We've got the California gnatcatcher that lives in the coastal chaparral. And then we have the burrowing beetle. So you've all heard about the Keystone Pipeline. Well, these little beetles live in the Midwest area, and they had to do biologist reports to find if these little critters lived where the Keystone Pipeline was being proposed. So what is smart growth? Now, if you were here this afternoon, you can't give away my secret. So if I told you that smart growth and sustainable development has some advantages, such as it is more equitable, that everybody gets to live together, we have mixed income levels and diverse ethnic backgrounds and diverse family structures all living in the same area, that high density promotes a sense of community and collective values. Well, isn't that what we all want? Community and common values. And high density development allows easy access to public transportation. And the economic advantages of public transit for getting commuters to and from work are obvious, and it is also an answer to congestion in the city. I mean, doesn't that all sound great? But if I told you that these advantages do not come from the APA's Smart Growth Guidebook, and it's not my theory, but instead it comes from a book written almost 50 years ago that was put out by the University of Moscow planners, and it was entitled The Ideal Communist City. So here we have smart growth principles and a development in Encinitas that is considered smart growth. There's retail and offices on the bottom, there's living quarters on the top, parking is underneath. It's about 2 blocks from the transit station, 2 blocks from downtown Encinitas. And here we have a comparison of the ideal communist city with smart growth. And in virtually every category, they are identical. The only 2 places where they differ are at the bottom between the private interiors and the height of the building. But the rest are all the same. So we've got high density housing, mixed use developments, mixed income housing, transit oriented development, discourages auto parking, calls suburbs monotonous, minimizes private yards, and maximizes common areas. And then we have the Department of Agriculture. And the thing with the Department of Agriculture is they have a bill called the Farm Bill. and they have to put it out about every 5 years. And it contains 15 different titles dealing with various things such as commodity crops, horticulture, food, livestock, conservation, rural development, energy, forestry, and several others. And the one thing in here that is rather disturbing is the conservation portion of this bill. Basically, these are land retirement programs called Conservation Reserve Programs or the Farmland Protection Program. And here's a map of the United States. Now this is from 2007. I got this directly off the NRCS website, and so the numbers aren't real up to date, but as of 2007, California had between 1,000 and 2,500 acres in this program. They also have a wetlands reserve program through the USDA to lock off any areas that might have wetlands. And then there's also the grasslands reserve program where they will put grasslands into these conservation acres as well. And here we have the National Forest System's land, which is part of the USDA. And they have a policy called the Roadless Areas Initiatives, or the Travel Management Plans. This was instituted under the Clinton administration, and basically this is prohibiting road construction, reconstruction, and timber harvest in inventoried roadless areas because they have the greatest likelihood of altering, fragmenting landscapes. They provide areas for populations of threatened and endangered species, and they provide large undisturbed landscapes for biological diversity. And this is happening all over the West. Then we have the Wildlands Project. Let me just skip through that one. And if you look at this map, all the red areas are proposed to be locked off for wildland corridors. The yellow areas are buffer zones, so you know, they don't want you being in the buffer zone. And if you can pick out the little green areas, that's where they want people to live. So as you can see, they want the United States to go back to what they consider pre-Columbian era, where it's all open and we don't have cars anymore and that sort of thing. So this Wildlands Project came out of the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. It calls for urgent action to reverse the effects of unsustainable human activities on global diversity and promotes wildlife corridors. And there are several NGOs that are implementing this, such as the Sierra Club and the Nature Conservancy. Then we have the White House Council on Rural Lands, and this is just crazy because we've got pretty much every department of the U.S. government involved, and then several agencies also involved in that. I think that's it. And then I forgot to mention with these open space easements or these preservation areas, the Morongo Basin is an area that is being proposed to have lots of land locked up in these open space easements. And so that also ties into this whole Agenda 21 stuff. This is a map of the from the BLM website. And again, notice where these wilderness areas are and how they overlap with the wildlands corridor map. So they're already implementing that, that map. And then here we have a map showing some new legislation. This is through the National Park Service, and it's called the Omnibus Public Land Management Act of 2009. Now, if there was ever a reason to consider the current economic situation a good thing, this is it. Because they want to buy land and lock it up in all the dark green areas. So they want, let's see, to create 2 million acres of new wilderness areas, along with national parks, wild and scenic rivers, historic sites, scenic trails, and other protected public lands. Now, according to this article that was put out by the American Society of Landscape Architects, that would be people in my profession, they state that the new law does not go far enough to create a nationwide system of protected landscapes. And these new parks and conservation areas mean the removal of existing families, ranchers, businesses, and the historic people of the area. It means land acquisition by willing cooperation to sell the property or condemnation or eminent domain. So, you know, either willingly give it up or we're just going to come in and take it anyway. And then also the, I don't know if we have any hunters or fishers in the group, but the Fish and Wildlife Service is setting aside land through habitat stamps that you have to buy with your hunting licenses. And as of 2008, more than 19,000 acres in Colorado have been put into these conservation easements. And I could get into the flooding along the Missouri Dam, but I'm probably running short on time. The Missouri River last summer had the worst flooding along there in history. And these dams are run by the Army Corps of Engineers, and they state that they are managing them properly. But I found it was a PowerPoint presentation on their website that stated that the management of their dams had absolutely nothing to do with the Endangered Species Act. However, they have other documentation that states that that is part of their management plan, is protecting natural habitat. So this is the Missouri River Basin map, and this is the area that flows into the Missouri River. And this is the result of the Army Corps of Engineers management through last summer. And you can see the widespread flooding. The picture on the top right is I-29. It's a freeway, a 4-lane freeway that runs north and south along the Iowa-Nebraska border, and it was completely flooded all summer long under about 4 to 5 feet of water. So there was a lot of devastation there this summer. Farmers pretty much lost everything that they had. So where do we get these regulations and policies? The Club of Rome, and I mentioned them earlier, and who are they? It's an environmental think tank promoting earth reverence and New Age philosophies. They believe that the earth is being harmed and a new system of global governance and control is the answer. And who are some of the members? Well, Al Gore, for one. Maurice Strong, who wrote the foreword in Agenda 21. Mikhail Gorbachev, David Rockefeller, Bill Clinton, George Soros, Henry Kissinger, Bill Gates, Jimmy Carter, and then some others from Europe are also in it. And then we've got Agenda 21 from the Rio Earth Summit. And then we have lots of NGOs that are part of this. And these are just some of them that I came up with. ICLEI is part of the, where regulations and whatnot originate. Then we have public-private partnerships, or PPPs, you'll hear that quite frequently. And this is basically a business arrangement between a city, a county, and a private corporation or foundation. It could be with universities or associations. And basically, it is corporate fascism. So what are the implications of these regulations? I went over one this afternoon with the client that I had with the pool project. Our farming, either we have no farming or we have higher costs of farming. So the whole Central Valley is basically a dust bowl now. The picture on the right is showing the avocado and citrus orchards in Valley Center, just north of Escondido. And they've had their water cut back and their water rates raised to such a high rate that they can no longer afford to water their trees. So they're having to just cut them down because they can't afford to grow the food anymore. And then in the Midwest, where I grew up, they have to work around wetlands and other areas, which costs their fuel, and just increases the amount of time it takes them to do their job. I went to a Water Smart conference in San Diego a few years ago, and in this conference, they talked about changing the social norms, expectations, and perceptions using peer pressure. Now, I thought we were all supposed to get over peer pressure when we were in junior high and high school, but they're still trying to use it on us. And they stated that momentum for cutting back water goes from resistance to acceptance to a way of life. And then we have the 20-gallon challenge, which is a 20% reduction in water use by 2020, and they use taxes to enforce and implement. And then I talked about this afternoon with your loss of private property rights. And then in Carlsbad, we have a lot of natural community conservation planning areas where it's preserved open space. And here's a map showing these NCCPs, and you can see the progression of the amount of land put into these conservation acres. So in 2000, there was just a little bit down in Southern California. In 2005, you can see some up in the northern part of California, and then a little bit more down in Southern California. And now look in 2010 at how much land has been put into these natural community conservation plans. So what is our call to action? Knowledge. Get educated. Speak out. Contact the media and let them know what's going on. Protect your land. And I think that's it. So again, thank you so much, and thank you for coming.
Our next speaker is a Ventura County supervisor on his second term. Ventura County, incidentally, has some of the most restrictive building regulations anywhere in the country. And they've gone beyond the, just from a building regulation standpoint, into adding their own version of what should be an endangered species. So these are species that are not on any state or federal endangered species list, but they've come up with 170 different species of animals and plants. They're in a special interest category. So if you're doing any kind of development, you have to actually go through and get a impact study done, not just on what would be an endangered species, but there's other 170 species. So please welcome Ventura County Supervisor Peter Foy.
This could be a number one fan right here. Hey. Are you as depressed as I am listening to some of that stuff? Isn't that unbelievable? It's unbelievable. Let me give you something to be proud of, though. You know, I get the opportunity, being a supervisor, to do a lot of great things. And one of the things I got the opportunity this week to do is the change of command out of Point Mugu, the military base we have out in Ventura County. It's a tremendous base. It's got 36,000 square miles of test range out in the ocean. It's got a lot of stuff. But the thing that makes it special is you get the opportunity to go out there and see the men and women who every day believe in this country, who protect us, who care about us, and are willing to lay their lives on the line, and the families that sacrifice as their loved ones go across the oceans to protect us. And it was just a tremendous thing to see the pomp and circumstance, the flag, how proud people are. These people that do everything for us, for this country. And when you see what we're dealing with today, when these people have fought and to give us rights and to allow us to live and do these things, and you see the other group of people, what we've seen here, take those rights away from us while we sleep, in a sense. And that's really what we've done. We've allowed this to happen. And it's just devastating. Some of the things that went on we talked about wilderness. What in your mind do you think of wilderness? You think of the woods and out there and that whole thing, and when you get to hike and you drive your car up and you get to go off and hike and everything else? That's not wilderness. That's not what they're thinking. When you talk about wilderness, these people came to me. I can't believe they came to me as a conservative person, but they came to me and said, I need your support. I said, what? We would like to take more of this land into wilderness, as she talked about. You know what you can't do in wilderness? You can't bring anything in that has a machinery or anything. So you can't drive up through wilderness and park and want to hike. You can't bring an automobile in. You can't bring a motorcycle in. You can't do it. It's nothing can go in there. Not even a chainsaw. Not even the people, our forestry people have to walk in with their axes. I don't care if it's 10 miles, whatever. You can bring nothing into those places. And that's why when you look at some of those people, my brother-in-law is in the forestry, and he said, this is the worst thing we've ever done, is try to take all this land and make it forestry. So there's some things out there that are just unbelievable when we deal with that. But one of the things I want to talk about, I talked a little bit this afternoon about, for a lot of you who weren't here, is we heard about it earlier today, or we heard about it, and that is being programmed, being educated. I believe that we have been educated, and it's gone for years and years and years, and it started almost 100 years ago. And I use it in something that's very important to all of us, and I call it taxes. And why I say that is because from the beginning of this country till 1913, how did we support the government? Where did they get their income? Tariffs, right. That's right. Tariffs, duties, that's how they got their income. And then in 1913, we passed a law, Congress passed them, that we're going to do income tax. And guess what? It wasn't on most of us. You had to be a millionaire back then in order for that to happen, right? So in 1913, what would that translate to being a millionaire back then to now? A multi-billionaire? So it was only on those billionaires. Does that sound familiar? Oh, only tax the rich? So what did they do? They programmed you to believe, okay, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me, let's just move forward. And then what did you see? Well, guess what? By 1918, they already collected $1 billion. $1 billion in those 5 years. And then what else happened? Then all of a sudden we started to see, once this kind of took hold, they started to do what? Not just the millionaires anymore. It started to come down to the rest of us, didn't it? Started to come down to the rest of us. And when they got a hold of your income, they got a hold of everything. Now, we talked about this afternoon, a lot of people, and I asked them, I said, does the government own 100% of your income? I'll ask you, does it? Well, I hear yes, I hear no. What is that? Well, some say no. It's my money. I work hard for it. I get it, and I give the government a little bit in taxes. Others say yes. I'm going to tell you it's yes. The government owns your income, because right now, if you work and you work for an employer, President Obama says you're going to tax these people 100%, Mr. Employer, otherwise you go to jail. He has no choice but to tax you 100%, doesn't he? And he takes your income. The government takes your income because this guy is required to do that. So the government owns your income. That's why it was said by one of our founding fathers that was the number one thing never to do was allow our incomes to be taxed. And that's why you never see it ever ratified. If you look through the Constitution, it's never ratified by the states, income tax. But let me tell you, this is just part of that programming. We got used to, okay, now we just pay taxes. And then all of a sudden we went into zoning laws, didn't we? Why were zoning laws put into place and building safety laws? Protect you. It wasn't going to protect you. You wanted to make sure you walk in this building, it's not going to fall down. We understand that kind of stuff. Zoning laws, you want to make sure that you had a house and nobody built something, a 20-story building next to you. Okay, we understand that. But what we did is we slowly got programmed. The government can kind of tell us what to do with our property. And then I was talking to some people today. My next one is homeowner associations. Anybody involved with a homeowner association? Some of you, right? You go in there, what do? Tell you what you can do with your property, don't they? They tell you what you can do with your property. Now, as we talked earlier, if I went in and I walk in and I buy that and I know there's a homeowner association, here are the rules, I understand that. That's not as bad. But what usually happens? They change the rules, don't they? And that's not what I paid for when I went in. But again, we got programmed. We got educated on this is what you do, and this is what happens. All of these were done for a reason to protect you. The homeowner association says, well, this is how we keep your property values up. This is what we do for you. And so we got going down that path. And so now we look at, and you talk to people and say, well, I can't do that, I can't do this, this is what they do, government does this. All of a sudden, we slowly allow our property rights to be eroded. You go back to somebody who said, I owned a piece of property, 50, 60, 70 years from now, I could do what I wanted. I could do what I wanted. I wanted to build a barn. Nobody said a word, just build a barn and do it. And there's still some states. David and I spent time in Montana. It was only about 10, 12 years ago. You go in there, I want to build a barn on my property. Basically they come and say, why are you coming to us? Build it. What do we care? All the assessor wanted to do is he wanted to tax it. That's all that mattered. But now all of a sudden you have to do all of it, and you have to go through all these things that we've heard about. Again, we've been programmed to understand. We've been educated. And what it has is we've been educated by the wrong group of people, haven't we? We've been educated to allow ourselves to give up our property rights. And all of it was that we believed it was for our own good. And I have supervisors on my board say, oh, this is all good government. To have a planning commissioner like this who understands this kind of stuff is unbelievable. And your supervisor appointed you is very fortunate to have that, because you don't get that. You don't get somebody who really understands and do it. But when you sit there and you hear of the hundreds of thousands of dollars people spend because of all these rules and laws, guess what? When that developer does that, he's spending that money. But who ultimately spends that money? Who pays it? You do. You do. Your projects that you bought into, your homes, your developments, when you go out, pay for something at a department store, is all paid for by you because of these kind of things that went on. It's unbelievable. And you hear about in planning departments how they're fighting you. In our planning department, I tried to get flat rate fees. You do a permit, it costs you this much no matter what. There's no way. I couldn't get my other 4 supervisors to go along with that. I couldn't get the planning department going. You know why? Because when they're in there looking over your project and basically fighting against you for it, they're charging you for it at $158 an hour is what we pay. So all of a sudden you got somebody on the other side that's supposed to be helping you get your project done, who doesn't really want to see your project done, but then is charging you for the work that they're doing against you. I'm just telling you, it's a crazy system that we live within. Would you say that's true? It's so true. It's just unbelievable. And you got people who come to me and say, supervisor, what do I do? This person doesn't want it. I've had some people, I've gone to the counter and they say, you are never going to get this project through. You're just not going to happen. They'll tell you up front. Why? Is there something in the rules I can't do it? No, I just don't want it to happen. Some are just honest about it. And you get these people and these planners coming out of these schools, and they are taught everything we just heard. Every single thing we heard. And the whole thing is you delay it, make it so expensive, and do it. Hopefully these people will give up. And you won't get it. And as he talked about, these environmental reports that are put out is unbelievable. We got one guy that's head of our public works, and he said, as of this point now, 50% of a project is now environmental cost. Would you say that's probably true? 50%. And you wonder why projects are so expensive. Not that the developer or anybody else is going to build anything any different than there's building standards and they know all this stuff. They're going to go through it. They're going to pay for all that. It's going to be put on a shelf. It meant nothing. Nobody looked at it. But you're going to pay for it. You are going to pay for that. This is taking your rights away because it's taking the money out of your pocket. It is destroying your opportunity to do whatever you need to do with your land. Whatever. And I come from a county. Now, if I was to talk to Jim over here and ask him about this, you ever heard of our Ventura County? You've probably heard of some of the stuff we have. You heard of SOAR? Save Our Open Space, Agriculture and Open Space. And so you can go from one end of the county to the other, and all of a sudden we got a guy whose business backs up against a little bit of farmland, and it's an open space. And he would like to annex that in or use that or change that zoning. Under SOAR, it's a vote of the people. But it's not a vote of the local people. It's a vote of the county. So a guy has to run, I want to annex 3 acres so I can, and this is perfect. In my district, a guy has, right along the railroad tracks, when they get that commercial area, you can do it, and right backs up against him is this ag land. It's about 15 or 20 acres. Too small to farm, nobody can get into it, it's just terrible. So it sat for years, and he owned it because he had this thing with his lumber yard. But business got good, and I don't have enough land on my 5 or 6 acres. So I put down some base, and I put some of my lumber on that, on my own property. But they came back and said, you can't have lumber on ag land, except that every other county in the state calls lumber an ag product. Not in my county, you can't. You can't have that. So all of a sudden, this guy's fined. We have these fines that come in that were supposed to just motivate people to fix things at $1,000 a day. Anyway, this whole thing, we go through this whole bit, and they finally said, okay, we see it's really something that, you can't use the land. You only wanted a couple acres. Let's see what we can do. Well, by law, we can't do anything. It's open space. It's ag. It's prime ag land. Yeah, it's prime ag land. It hasn't been farmed in 40 years, but it's prime ag land. Anyway, now it says what you can do, though, is you can go to a SOAR vote, which means people 100 miles away are going to vote to see if you can allow to have these couple acres put in. But it's only going to cost you $1 million if you tag it in with the negative general election. Is that unbelievable? Is that unbelievable? Not somebody that's permanently putting a building on ag land or anything else. He's just putting base down so he can drive his forklifts on to put lumber on. This is the kind of stuff that this goes on in my county. It's not as restrictive in some of these other counties. But this is the kind of thing that goes on. And what it is, and people are proud of it. I got one supervisor and I said, man, we've got to be the most restrictive county in California. He looks at me, we are, and probably the most restrictive county in the country. And they're proud of that. Everybody's heard of Santa Barbara as a real slow growth county, right? Santa Barbara grows at 1.5%. We're lucky to grow it at 0.75% because there's no ability to use land. As I said earlier, this is how far this stuff goes. The idea of a church right next to the city of Simi Valley, if you've been there, you've been to the Reagan Library. Simi Valley is in the Reagan Library. And it's where the Reagan Library is. Right there on this edge of town, there's this big, this whole open area. And there's 138 acres that were available. So this church said, I cannot find any land inside our city. We just like to take 5 or 7 acres, build this church, and we're going to donate all the rest of it to the library and all the open space up there so it'll all stay natural. And it's no difference because it's right on the edge of the city. Not build. First of all, county. They couldn't do said you can't. Anyway, you know what they did? So, in order to make sure that nobody built in the open space, nobody built on ag land, they said then we're going to have an assembly use piece, which means you can have no assembly, and everybody's treated equally. Everybody. Throughout the county of Ventura, there's no assembly use in open space now. So you tell me, what did that do to Harvard wants county. You can't do it. You have an assembly use. However, there is one group that can do it. State government can do it. State government doesn't have to follow any of those laws. They can come to whatever university they want in any place they want. Any place they want. Those are the kind of things that are going on. This is what's happened. We have allowed our rights to be taken from us. You heard all this, the things that are going on, but I'm just telling you, it's at a point now where it was, they turned up the stove, or they turned up the water, the boiling water, and the frog that was swimming around. But now they've just gone and said, we're grabbing it. We're taking it. And it got so bad when the president got elected here and people felt like they were empowered. In my county, they did what they call an overlay in some areas. They tried to push. And the strongest environmentalists, couple supervisors, tried to push this on areas where they took this whole overlay of thousands and thousands of acres and said, we're going to totally control what you do on every little thing, even to the point where on any type of hill, the most you can build is 1,200 square feet. I don't care if you paid $10 million for this beautiful lot. That's all you can do. And even at that point, the people then finally backed out and said, we're going to fight. And they got up and fought. But it was only because it was such that this supervisor felt empowered because the Obama administration, what they were doing, he jumped in, and we're going to do the same thing. And finally, the people just said no. But, so he goes around the other way and slowly starts again, turn the heat up, and don't go after it. That's what happened. You know what? This is an opportunity for us to pay attention to what's going on and to do something. At some point, we get past a tipping point where we've educated our kids and they don't know the difference. A lot of us are old enough to know when it was easy to do things in California. See, I look at California as the land of opportunity. California has always been the land of opportunity. How many of you remember, how many of you were around here in the 1960s and 70s? Ah, a good group of you. And when everybody said, well, first of all, let me just tell you, when you travel overseas, you come from California, what do they talk about? Hey, in Hollywood, you must see all those stars. You guys see all this stuff, right? I don't hear them saying that. I want to be careful what I say here. I don't hear them saying that about North Dakota. I don't hear them saying that about Iowa. It's all about California. California has this special place in all of our hearts, especially as Californians, but around the world. But back in the 60s and 70s, what did we have in California? We had more cars being produced than any place outside of Michigan, didn't we? We had best shipyards in the country here in California. We had the greatest aerospace industry here in California. We had more agriculture produced here in California. We had more high-tech California, more movies in California. We had it all in California. You all look like the same kind of people that, like you said, that were here 30, 40 years ago. Has anything changed? No. No, nothing's changed with you, but the people and the decisions that are made have all changed, haven't they? The water we don't have because trillions of gallons go out to the ocean, as we saw, right? We can't, you can't be a person who has a great idea to be an animator and say, I'd love to build the greatest place on earth and go to Anaheim, find a strawberry field, and build Disneyland anymore, can you? No, you can't do that anymore, can you? That's what's happened to California. Not you, the people, but the rules and regulations we've allowed to be taken from us. That's what's happened. We still have the opportunity to have California be the greatest place. I believe California and this nation, immigrants come here for what reason? Because the streets are paved with gold. And they're not nuggets of gold, they're paved with the gold of opportunity. And we have the opportunity right now to say enough is enough, to fight back on all the things that we've heard, and to say we will take California back. I still believe the way California goes, the nation goes. We've seen it go on this environmental side, haven't we? The way California goes, the nation's gone the other way. We have the opportunity to turn it around. This economy is in the dumps, and a lot of it is because of what we see here. We have the opportunity to change it. So I look forward to seeing every one of you take action to make a difference. But let me just say one thing here that I have to say. We did a video. I don't know if you've probably seen David's face in all of our videos for AFP, but there's a piece here that talks about that we just did in the video that I like to read here. It's from our founding fathers, John Adams, and he once warned, "The moment the idea is admitted into society that property is not as sacred as the law of God, and that there is not a force of law and a public justice to protect it, anarchy and tyranny commence." Right? If it's not as sacred as the law of God, once they grab your property, they've got everything. Thank you.
All right, we have a special guest from Northern California. Debbie Bacigalupi is a person who's been involved in property rights issues up in Northern California as the daughter of somebody who has a cattle ranch, and this cattle ranch is under assault right now because of environmental regulations that are being imposed on them up in Siskiyou County. So she's the co-founder of Rural America. Please welcome Debbie.
So I'm actually from San Carlos, and my parents have a cattle ranch in Siskiyou County in Shasta Valley, which is above Mount Shasta. So I'm really familiar with what's going on here because it's the same thing that's going on in San Francisco and the Bay Area. And I live in an area where environmentalists hate what my family does. So what's under attack? Farmers and ranchers, rural land, and all of us. So we are experiencing Agenda 21, United Nations Sustainable Development. My prediction for Rio 20 Plus is that unless we stop their movement of this summit, I fear our future incredibly. In fact, I have a document right here from the joint response of the Rome-based organizations to the Rio Plus 20 Zero draft outcome document, January 2012. Ag must change. Agriculture impacts more of the world's surface area than any other human activity. It's called Sustainable Climate Smart Agriculture. So I hope this summit is not the nail in the coffin of the United States of America. So government's goal is to change our behavior. They want to nudge us, just like Cass Sunstein, our regulatory czar, wrote in his book. He thinks we have a little bit of da in us, and so therefore we can be manipulated. So this is a slide from Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and a recent one, and I just want you to note what it says at the bottom. They want to change us from consumer ownership to rental service model. Another one, manual egg beaters, air drying clothes, play guitar instead of TV, and your lifestyle decisions about privacy are going to change. You might be sharing a home with someone you don't know. So, you and the cow. So what does the cow have to do with this conversation here? Our government is working very hard, and environmental groups, working very hard to change our behavior around what we eat, how we eat, when we eat. They're trying to nudge us into a vegetarian lifestyle. So I don't even have to ask, did anybody eat beef without knowing? Somebody in the room ate beef, and somebody in the room is wearing leather. In fact, I think we just had MoveOn.org here, and they were wearing leather shoes. I saw that. So the experts say that families like mine are destroying the earth. We are taking your drinking water. Our cows are taking your drinking water. And in March, coming up very soon, the United Nations is going to declare a World Water Day because we are running out of water. Did anybody tell them we are a closed system and we cannot run out of water? So here's a cute little picture from our California Food and Ag government website. Everything but that wind turbine is unsustainable. So experts are wrong. cows and ranchers are good for the earth. Ranchers take care of their land. Cows feed the earth, and they take care of the land as well, and they take care of the forest by getting rid of the non-native trees in the forest that are now overrun. So why are they doing this? Because there's a United Nations document, and there's a United Nations movement called Codex Alimentarius. Look it up and review the videos that they have out there, and it's your new food system, your new food laws for, your food laws. So just quick, beef nutrition, 3 ounces of beef, you're going to have to eat 3 ounces of tuna to get the same nutritional values. B12, you're going to have to eat 7 chickens. So I don't know, does beef make you fat, or I'll let you answer that. So livestock is absolutely everywhere in this slide. Everything you see. In fact, this room couldn't be built without some sort of animal byproduct. So the global warming craze is saying that ranchers and farmers are destroying your earth, so therefore farming and ranching costs will skyrocket. In fact, they already are. Food imports will increase, and regulations, permit fees, they're rewriting previous law to stop the way we do agriculture. This means for you less choice for food, and byproducts, by the way, your shoes and all of that. And it also means higher food prices. So we talked about the UN and private property rights earlier. This is a little video I put together this is at my parents' ranch. I took most of this video in one day. Driving from the ranch back home to San Carlos. And this, according to environmental groups, is unsustainable. But that's sustainable. So Siskiyou County is under attack. We are the Wildlands Pet Project. With the America Great Outdoors Initiative, we also have the potential to be monumentalized. Over 10 million acres. And it's going to be called Climate Refuge. So the Klamath River dams, how many have heard that they're planning on removing those dams? It's going to be secretarial determination. It's just been pushed off, and it's all due to a coho salmon, which is non-native, it's non-indigenous, and it has no right being on the endangered species list. And the other thing to note is the Nature Conservancy and the California Department of Fish and Game are using your money to buy more ranches and take up more land. So will we survive? So we have, as ranchers and farmers, going on right now, the incidental take permit program, which is if we get caught with a dead coho salmon on our property, it's $25,000 per incident. Fencing setbacks, it's going to cost us money to fence along rivers. We're also going to lose valuable ag land. They want us to move from flood irrigation to sprinkler irrigation, and if you know water, you know that flood irrigation actually is really beneficial because it seeps down into the ground. The roots want to follow the water down to the ground, and it refeeds the aquifers. You lose trans-evaporation when you do sprinklers. 30% of water is lost in sprinklers. So Water Master Program, Jerry Brown just canceled it. So in December, overnight, my parents' bill went from $4,500 or $450 to over $3,600. And our electricity surcharge has gone up 3%. That surcharge is to help pay for dam removal, which is in the billions of dollars by the time they're done. So down with the dams and down with the people. Over 1,000 U.S. dams have already been removed. Those are government dams. There's private dams that are being removed too. This is billions of acre-feet of storage water, billions of acre-feet of water that we use for agriculture and to drink and to flush the toilet. Patagonia, REI, Prana, many companies are involved in dam removal. In fact, Patagonia their big goal is 100 American dams removed this year. So there's already been some very important dams removed. So down with the Klamath Dam soon. So they're clean, green energy. And you have some dams around your area too that I'm sure are set up for relicensing, and they're considering removing. And you have to stop it. So Secretary Salazar, due to Siskiyou County standing up and fighting like no other county, has stopped Secretary Salazar with McClintock. But I understand that the secret agreements that led to dam removal in Siskiyou County, they're now back in secret agreement meetings. And they're using stakeholders, which are mostly outside of Siskiyou County. So just to give you an idea, there is 20 million cubic yards of feet of sediment that is built up behind these dams. So the very same fish that they're trying to save is the very same fish they will kill once they breach this dam and let all that pollutant wash 180 plus miles out to sea. They're also going to take other endangered species as well as this sludge moves out to sea, but that's okay. How many heard of the constitutional sheriffs in Siskiyou County? So this video isn't playing, but that's okay because I'm out of time. But you can find this video on YouTube. It's fabulous. And then we are in the crosshairs of the Wildlands Project. But there's also a whole other thing that you need to start studying, which is biomass. So what you can do, like everybody else has said, you can talk about this everywhere, educate yourself, research these non-government organizations. I look at their tax forms, I see who they're connected to. Mary Nichols is connected to Environment Now. Environment Now is connected to Klamath Waterkeepers. Klamath Waterkeepers wants those dams out. Connect the dots. If you look at all the areas that are under attack, there's a common theme. Find that common theme and expose it. Videos to watch, Crying Wolf on Vimeo, fabulous. They're reintroducing wolves. These wolves are protected, they're collared, and if you shoot that wolf on your property, even if it's killing your livestock, you go to jail and you're fined. So One Bay Area, my friend Heather Goss has been huge about stopping the visioning plans. Farmageddon, fabulous movie about raw milk and the USDA and the FDA doing search and seizures. Here's some more. Siskiyou County, Constitutional Land Part 1, 3-minute video. Defend Rural America will give you the facts on dam removal in Klamath and the Klamath River. And then we have our Sheriff Stand Tall, which I think has like nearing 40,000 hits at this point. So anyway, here's what I want to say. What's happening now is not fair, it's not right, and it's hurting good people. And the only way that we're going to stop this is if everybody in this room and everybody in the next room and so on gets involved and becomes speakers and becomes the voice of we the people to stop these people who do not care about our country, do not care about our rights, and some of them already left. Anyway, pray for our country and our patriots. Our game: outwit, outplay, outlast, outsmart, outlaw, and let's survive.
Okay, our next guest was a voice in Los Angeles on talk radio for 8 years. Warren Duffy was the host of Duffy and Company. Now he's involved with a group here called CFACT, and he's the co-founder of CFACT California. So please welcome Warren Duffy.
Whew. We got a dose of bad news here tonight, didn't we? I'm sure glad they set up a bar. Can't wait for this thing to be over. Holy Toledo. Well, I've got some good news for you, everybody. There is a business that's thriving in California. It's called relocation reps. These are agents who are sent to our state from other nearby and sometimes distant states, and they entice our businesses to leave California. They're doing great. There are more people beating a track out of California than there are arriving here. We have a real climate problem in California. We've made the business climate so miserable that businesses are pulling out of here. Who's going to pay the tax bills? Who's going to pay for all this stuff that they're dreaming up? I just want to say before I get started here, I am so grateful to the two of you. When I heard that there were going to be guys from the planning commissions up here, I thought we were going to have a fist fight. Because, I mean, if there's one thing I don't like, it's a planning commission. And isn't it great to hear that we've got some friends up there on the other side? We've had a great history lesson. I want to give you a very practical demonstration. How many of you are aware? I want to take this right back to AB 32, Assembly Bill 32, which was the empowerment legislation for something called the 2006 Global Warming Solutions Act of California. In it, there are a whole bunch of things, but one of the elements is called cap and trade. How many of you know how cap and trade works? Ah, you think you do. Is this turned up? Good. I need some volunteers. You're a likely suspect. What do you like? Come on up here. You have to check your notes. You'll remember this. I have a gentleman here who's going to play the role of the state of California. And I have here a young lady who is a dairy farmer. Now, under the 2006 Global Warming Solutions Act, our knowledgeable people in Sacramento called the California Air Resources Board, led by Mary Nichols, who has been described by Tucker Carlson, if you know him from Fox News. She is the most dangerous woman in America. I mean, think of that. Maxine Waters, Nancy Badger Eyes, Nancy Botox, I mean, Diane Feinstein, go down the list. No. The most dangerous woman is Mary Nichols of the California Air Resources Board. For 6 years, since 2006, they've been figuring out the pollution levels for every business in our state. And they put a cap on it. So, our poor sister over here, who has her dairy farm, your cows do what? They do more than that. Yeah, and they, kind of work with both things. Well, she's in a profit-making business, so she's got some money over here, and you'll notice this is slightly larger than real money. This is Obama money. It's slightly recorded. And over here, we have the state of California issuing carbon credits. Get it? You're going to cap her pollution levels, but if she coughs up enough money, she can buy a carbon credit. Got it? Okay, now, he wants to sell this to you for $100. Could you give him $100 for you? Well, just a second. Well, that's one of the problems, you see. It's kind of arbitrary. They can make up their mind year to year what your pollution level is going to be. But they're going to start out, they're going to sell you a pollution credit over here, and it's a carbon credit, and it'll cover your cows, and it costs $100, and you're going to make a mistake. Oops, wait just a second. This has now been ruled a commodity. So this is like gasoline, this is like wheat, this is like corn, this is a commodity now. Pollution is a commodity. And regretfully, the state can sell commodities. So we need a commodity trader to handle the transaction. You know who just opened up on September the 12th in San Francisco? Hannah Fitzgerald and the Green Exchange. They've been doing all of this in Europe for 7 years. Captain Trade has been going on in Europe for 7 years. $134 billion. It's cost 12,000 businesses in 30 different countries in Europe. And do you know how much they've impacted the environment? Nothing. That's not what Captain Trade is all about. I want to sell this to you on behalf of the state, but gee, I just got to hold it for a minute. You know the electric guys? Well, when they turn the generators, they have to use stuff that makes it. And they offered me $200 for this stuff. And then right after that, one of the wineries, you know when you ferment grapes and it turns into sugar, it makes a gas. The average winery is going to have to pay $2 million a year for carbon credits. So they just told me, you can fool with a lot, don't fool with my wine. So, I'll tell you what, I'll sell this to you for $500. Yeah, I know, it makes me drop my money too. $500, you have $500? Very good. $500, okay. You get the carbon credit. You're the state of California. You get $100. Now you understand carbon credit. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Does that make it a little more understanding? You'll notice pollution is not cut down a bit. She gets a credit, her house can keep on doing whatever they want to do. But there's a transaction that happens here. Do you know when the first carbon credit sale is going to happen? August 15th. Jerry Brown was just on TV 3 Sundays ago, and you know what he said? They are anticipating the first carbon credit sales will net $1 billion for the state. And you know what Jerry wants to spend it on? The bullet train to nowhere. I could go into that in a lot more detail, but you've been very patient and you've been here for a very long time, and we still have a couple more speeches to go. Speaking of AB 32, and speaking directly to how this is, I called up Tom McClintock, and you all know and respect Tom, right? He and I are friends 20 years now. We both work together at the Claremont Institute. And I called Tom and I said to him, how is this going to, this Assembly Bill 32, you were up there in Sacramento, how's this going to impact the state? He said, well, first of all, gas prices are going to double. That was when gas prices were $3 a gallon. They're already heading to $6, and probably they're going to go higher. Tom forecast that. He also said that the electric bills are going to go up by 1/3. The young lady who was up here from the ranch, her family's electric bill has already started going north. Then we have the wine people. And then we have, do you realize the biggest target in California for Assembly Bill 32 is diesel trucks? They're called mobile polluters. According to the CARB regulations, if your truck is more than 7 years old, you have to replace it. That's $135,000 per truck. If it's less than 7 years, you have to retrofit it. And that only costs you about $17,000. But a lot of our trucking companies in California are mom and pop organizations. And you start throwing 10 trucks, to retrofit them at $17,000 a piece. I mean, that's why people are moving out of the state. We just went to a trade group down in San Diego and spoke down there. And the cement guys are saying, yeah, that's the reality of the California cap and trade law, but here's our reality. We're going to move our business over to Arizona. We'll still deliver your cement. It's just there's going to be a slight mileage charge. And everything that we built, you drive home tonight, you look at where the cement is being poured right now, and just imagine all those businesses leaving our state. I wanted to give you a rundown, just very quickly, of where some of these businesses are moving to and who they are. Bubba Gump Shrimp Company moved to Texas. The Claim Jumper from Irvine, that's where their headquarters are, just moved to Houston, took 200 jobs with them. Google just moved a big new plant that they built in Pittsburgh. Intel invested $1 billion in a new plant in Vietnam. Digital Domain was Westlake Village. They've moved to Florida. The Investor's Business Daily, the newspaper, moved to Plano, Texas, and took 200 jobs with them. Texas is getting the most of our businesses. The second is Arizona. The third is Colorado. The fourth is Nevada and Utah. And the fifth is Virginia and Oregon. The businesses are fleeing California. Well, I want to suggest something, folks. We ain't going to run for the border. We're going to stand here and we're going to fight. If they're trying to drive us off the ranch, they ain't going to succeed. Are you with me? I don't know that America remembers how to be free. I don't know if we can remember back to when there wasn't a time that they didn't tell us how many gallons of water we had to use when we flush, or how much water the shower head is supposed to pour out. I like a fire hose shower. Don't you? And I get these dribble things. I'm going to go up to the room tonight and they'll dribble at me. And I just get, where's the government getting off telling me how my shower should operate? They're everywhere. Well, here's what we're going to do, folks. We're going to, first of all, get educated. Did you learn anything here tonight? I want to educate you, and then I want to motivate you. There are things that you can do. We have a petition back here. This is my wife, Pam, standing back there. Wave, honey. She's my co-partner in founding our organization, CFACT SoCal. And we have a petition back there. It's not to qualify anything for the ballot. We did that with Prop 23, and we got our ears boxed by all those global organizations that you saw up there. Those environmentalists, we raised $11 million to support 23. They raised $31 million. We tried that. We're going up to California. We're going to drop off petitions in the office of CARB and in the office of our governor, and we're going to take busloads of people with us. And we're going to make a hit up there. I just know it. So please sign our petition before you leave. It doesn't cost you anything. If you'd like to do it online, go to our website, CFACT SoCal, C-F-A-C-T, CFACTSoCal.org, and our petition is there. We have some other things back there. One of them is a DVD, and it's something that our organization picked up from some Irishmen. It's a DVD that's got Al Gore's picture on the front, and it says, "Not evil, just wrong." I don't think Al Gore is an evil man. Now, you may disagree with that, but I know one thing for sure. He's wrong. He is dead wrong. As a matter of fact, I'm tired of these environmentalists telling me what to do, and then they go off and they do whatever they want to do on my dime. Al Gore owns 4 houses. 4 houses. He has one in Nashville, his little house from when he was a senator. He has one in Arlington. It's a little bit bigger, but still pretty modest. He has a 3rd one back in Tennessee that is a palace. And it uses 30 times the electricity of the average customer in Tennessee. 30 times. You know how he gets a green footprint out of the deal? Over here, he's got his money that he would normally have to pay for a carbon footprint. But over here, he's got all of the green companies that he has invested in. So he buys the carbon credits from his own company, and then he can fly on his private jet and do all the rest. Oh yeah, he has a 4th house. It's up in Montecito. It's about 10,000 square feet. It uses an awful lot of energy, and if you're wondering why he's up there, it's because he's now a partner in the largest venture capital firm in America, Kleiner Simmons. It's a huge firm, and Al's a partner. He makes money off all of these green investment companies that just somehow seem to wind up getting grants from the Energy Department or the Interior Department or the Commerce Department. Somehow or another, he's getting his palm greased, and he's preaching to us how we should behave. Well, it's time to stand up, guys, like Al Gore. I'm tired of being bullied around by people like him, and I invite you to join our little campaign. You've heard to go to the council meetings and go to the planning sessions. Do me a favor, one night a month, turn the TV off. Don't fool around with Angela Jolie's leg. It really is not important, but what's happening to our country is. Go, speak up, let your voice be heard. And finally, we have educate, motivate, activate, and our 4th ingredient is litigate. We want to sue. You know that today is the 2nd day of a hearing in a district court in Washington, D.C. 20 different states and organizations have filed an action against the EPA to do away with the whole of this global warming nonsense. We may not win every front that's being sued, but we're going to win some of it. We're going to chip away. In December, we had 2 more lawsuits that came up, one up in San Francisco. We managed to get the low carbon fuel emissions that CARB had instituted. We got them ruled unconstitutional. Back in Washington, D.C., same week, we had another 3-judge panel that did cross-state pollution. You know, if you make smoke in Kentucky, they can sue you in Virginia because you're a polluter. Well, that's unconstitutional, and that's what the court said. We've got them on the retreat. We're going to win this thing. Please contribute, if you can, to our legal action fund. We're trying to get $100,000, hire a law firm, take it all the way to the Supreme Court if we have to, and we want to put CARB out of business. We want to put California on a no-carb diet. I want to leave you tonight with one thought, and that is I'm old enough. I was just 74 this past weekend. Yeah, it needs a round of applause, let me tell you. I'm old enough to remember when this country was free. I'm old enough to remember when I could go to school and every morning at homeroom period, we read the Bible and we said a prayer. Matter of fact, I'm a Baltimore boy, and the lady who brought a suit that stopped all of that brought the suit in Baltimore. Her son was Billy Murray. He went to the school right next door to mine. His mom was Madeline Murray O'Hare, the best-known atheist ever in the history of America. Her suit back in the 1950s threw out prayer and threw out Bible reading in the public schools. It's been downhill ever since. Well, I don't know about you. I don't think this fight is a sprint. I think this is a marathon. I don't know if we're going to be able to turn this country around in my lifetime. But I want to plant some seeds, the seeds of freedom tonight, this year, this month, and I want to invite you to join me in that effort. Let's plant the seeds of freedom so that they can grow into another Statue of Liberty that will remain free and a city on a hill for all of the world to see. I invite you to join me in that noble goal. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Duffy. In December, the United Nations announced that it was forming a Climate Justice Commission. And the goal of this Climate Justice Commission is to be a law enforcement agency to make sure that sustainability laws are enforced, and also to make sure that developed countries pay for the imbalance of the pollution to underdeveloped countries. Now, we think, well, we're a sovereign nation, we don't need to worry about that. But then you look at a justice like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who looks not just at our Constitution, but international law for precedent on decisions she makes, and you realize that that is a real threat, unfortunately, to this country. Our next guest is somebody in the legal profession who I've known, I guess I've known him since Agenda 21 was first came into being, about 20 years, so I guess we were, 5 when we first met? Brad Dacus is the president and founder of Pacific Justice Institute, and he's been a good friend for a long time. He's out there as a warrior and a champion, fighting for property rights, and particularly property rights from a religious freedom standpoint. Please welcome Brad Dacus.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, good. Real quick, how many heard of Pacific Justice Institute before? Raise your hand. Okay, that's good. For those of you who did not raise your hand, we are a nonprofit 501c3 legal defense organization. We're the opposite of the ACLU and the Sierra Club. Okay, we're the good guys. We have over 500 volunteer affiliate attorneys just in California alone. That's a miracle. Volunteer and attorney in the same sentence. We have 5 offices in California. The ACLU has 7. We have 5, so we're catching up. And we handle more case matters on the West Coast, defending issues of faith and liberty, than any organization in the country, bar none. And we're excited about that. And we do it all without charge. Last year, over 4,000 requests for assistance, all without charge. Now, I'm going to try to speed through some things here because I want us to get a little bit, stay on pace here. But so please, if I'm going too fast, just speak up and go like this. I used to live in Texas. I'll go back to talking like a Texan, okay? Just go like that. So I'll adjust. If I'm not talking loud enough, just go like this, and I'll try to talk louder. Okay. Now, we at Pacific Justice Institute also, real quick before I forget, have an event coming up on May the 12th called Celebration of Justice. We're going to have Scott, thank you. Thank you, Scott Rasmussen. I'm getting tired. Scott Rasmussen, the Rasmussen Polling. He's on Fox News a lot. And if you're interested in that, he's going to be coming. He's going to be speaking. We're also going to have a straw poll, presidential and vice presidential straw poll. It's going to be really exciting. Please feel free to register or sponsor a table if you'd like. And also we have being passed out these blue sheets. These are sign-up sheets so we can keep you guys updated with what we're doing, and we do so very tastefully. I have a rule at Pacific Justice called WWGD. What would Grandma do if she got this in the mail? And if my relatives wouldn't want it, then others wouldn't either. So we're very, very sensitive and respectful in that regard. Now, I'm going to talk about something a little differently if I can, and that is the extent to which the government control and government authority with regards to land use and property has been a mode of persecution for religious freedom. You say, how can those two fit, right? What are you talking about? Let me give you examples. First was, for example, this is a public use of property. A church wanted to have a beach service. A beach service. It was like at Easter time. No problem, right? It actually was a Calvary Chapel. Well, it turns out there was some problem. They said, no, we're not going to let you do this. And so we at Pacific Justice were called in, and they had their beach service. And so that was wonderful. There's another situation was involving a church that had a whitewater rafting ministry. Well, the government came in and says, oh, you can't do that. This is a commercial venture. And so you can't have a whitewater rafting ministry. So we're going to kick you off the rivers. And we were contacted. And we at Pacific Justice, we don't get angry over these things. We just sue. And so, needless to say, that was quickly resolved. And then also we get involved in land use zoning issues. For example, there was a synagogue that wanted to build in the East San Francisco Bay Area. They were told, oh yes, we'll let you build in the East San Francisco Bay Area, but you know what? There's some land use restrictions, heavy restrictions we have a list of for just one day of the week though. Yeah, how'd you guys know? Saturday. Government is that predictable, isn't it? And that's what they did, a long list. And then we were contacted. We had the privilege to represent that rabbi and that synagogue that wanted to be built. And make a long story short, those usage restrictions were taken off the list. And we're really excited about that. We also go to bat for churches as well. And there was one church down in Guatay. You ever heard of Guatay, California? The resort community. Okay. It's on your way to Arizona from San Diego. When you start seeing the lizards coming out for vacation sunbathing, that's Guatay. It's a small little community. They have only one church. After 20 years, they were giving a notice they must cease and desist using this building they were leasing for 20 years. Why? Because the San Diego County Board of Supervisors had determined that, in fact, there was a problem with the zoning. You see, 23 years ago, it had briefly been rezoned to be a country western bar. And it had always been used as a church, but technically rezoned, and it was not rezoned back again, and therefore you can't use this building because it's supposed to be a country western bar. But don't worry, you can pay us a large amount of fees, and we'll see if we'll let you use it again. So they put a lock on the building, told them they'd be fined over $2,000 a day that they're caught using that building for worship. The church went underground. Now, the significance of a church going underground in the United States is real significant when you compare it with communist China. Because in communist China, they actually have some degree of religious freedom. I mean, relatively speaking, they're underground, but not as underground as Guatay, California. So, anyway, make a long story short, we quickly got involved, and our office in San Diego, Pete Lepiscopo, one of our Tiger attorneys, went right into federal court. Federal judge says, this is draconian. He says, and he ordered the county, he says, open that church now. And they did. And now we're still litigating, though. So, because the county wants over $300,000 in lost permitting fees against a small retirement mobile home community of Guatay. So we're still litigating. Then we had a case, a real monumental case, it's out of San Leandro. And in fact, I think this is a real important case for those who are in local government to take note of. What happened was a four-square church in San Leandro had this, they'd outgrown their facility. It was something pastors dream about. They actually happened. It was major outgrown. And so they went ahead and bought a building that had been on the market for a long time. It was in commercial zoned, and they bought it. It had been allowed zone for assembly usages, so no problem, right? Oh, but there's a problem here. Because the city of San Leandro decided, oh no, not that kind of assembly use. That's religious, and we're not going to allow that. So we're not going to let you have a use permit at all, period. So we at Pacific Justice filed a lawsuit. The judge from San Francisco in federal court, from San Francisco, that's right, ruled against the church in favor of the city, and ruled in favor of all 8 reasons. First, they only had one reason. We want property tax revenue. But then they talked to their lawyer, and they came up with 7 other reasons. Thank you, lawyer. So they have 8 reasons. The judge says those are all valid reasons to keep out churches. They came up with every reason they could think of. Then we appealed to the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, I know what you're thinking. What good thing can come from the 9th Circuit, right? That's right. Well, let me just tell you this. In the Old Testament, if God can speak through a donkey, he can speak through the Ninth Circuit. And I've seen it happen. For sake of time, I can't talk about our other Ninth Circuit cases last year where we actually won, but that's exactly what happened. The donkey spoke. And they reversed the lower court, and they said that the first reason was invalid to keep out churches. The second reason, invalid. All 8 reasons, invalid. And they came down with a monumental decision that impacts religious institutions across the country because the Supreme Court this last year allowed that decision to stand. And that precedent is one which says negative economic impact is never a valid reason to keep out a church or other religious institution. Monumental. People wonder why I'm not moving back to Texas. Well, there's several reasons, but that's one reason I'm not, because I see tremendous potential here in California and see wonderful victory opportunities. Another challenge we saw was the local governments. I gave you other church cases and stuff, but another example, which is unique, deals with the abuse of the Fifth Amendment takings clause. People have probably heard of the case Kelo, where the Supreme Court decided to expand it, the use of eminent domain, where governments could just seize property and in a much greater expansive way. Well, here, fast forward, everyone thought, well, that's never going to be used against churches and religious institutions. Governments will never do that. Well, here's what happened. In Visalia, California, a church decides to buy this old movie theater in downtown area to turn into a youth center, a positive youth center. What happens to this youth center? Well, the city of Visalia found out it was about to close escrow, and a church was buying it. After it was on the market a long time, a church was buying it right before it closed escrow. They moved in with eminent domain, called an emergency meeting, because the church is going to seize the building via eminent domain. And they thought they had it all done. And then we were contacted, and we filed a lawsuit. Making a long story short, after 2 years of litigation, there's now a downtown youth center in Visalia. By the way, I once was talking to a group in Valencia. It was a Rotary Club group, and the one gentleman just got up and left. It was the mayor. Just got up and just pounced out, and someone else was really angry and pounced out. And all these people were just really hostile. And afterwards, I said, what's the problem? It seemed like they weren't, very friendly. And they said, well, you kept talking about that Valencia case. I said, Valencia? Did I say Valencia? No, it's Visalia. Well, they thought it was Valencia. Anyway, I had to apologize. You got to be careful when you're using city names, So anyway. But it was a wonderful victory, but that's something that we're going to see as a fight down the road in the courts, a head-to-head collision between eminent domain and the rights of religious institutions, religious freedom, and the Arlupa statute, Religious Land Use Utilized Persons Act. So stay tuned. Now, I could go on and on talking about cases. I'm going to do a fast forward and talk about 5 action items. 5 action items. First, we can take back local governments. It's not just a theory. Let me give you a specific example. A friend of mine who I have tremendous respect for lives in the area of El Cajon, and he's worked really hard for years with other people in the community to take back their city in very positive ways. Well, one problem they had was with the redevelopment agency. And before Jerry Brown could pull the plug, they had already pulled the plug. Because what they did is they found out what the agenda was it was all about Project 21, and the controls were abusive, their usage of funds was abusive. They moved very aggressively, and they got an audit with regards to how they were using their funds. They couldn't figure out, the agency could not justify where the money was going. They could not justify it, and they shut them down. And the people involved resigned. They have El Cajon back again. And if they can do it in El Cajon, folks, they can do it anywhere, whether we're talking about a redevelopment agency or a planning commission that has gone awry. Local communities can take back their communities. And El Cajon is a classic example of that. So I want to encourage you. Number one, we can take back our communities. And that's a wonderful model, I think, for the rest of the country. And he gave me permission to talk about that, so I have permission. Number two is we can advocate change in the zoning codes. I think it was Fairfield up in Northern California where they had a map of the zoning for religious institutions, and there's a little tiny orange speck. And the little tiny orange speck on the map for the city was the areas that religious institutions could exist. A tiny little orange speck. After we were done, a third of that map was colored orange. That was good, right? Well, fast forward, Claremont, California, where I used to go to school, elementary school, a long time ago. Claremont, California was prohibiting a church from having land use zoning permit. We sent them a letter stating that prohibiting any area, zoning any area that forbids a religious institutions from being like a church is a violation of the federal RLUIPA statute and the Constitution. And much to my shock, they actually agreed with us. And they rezoned the city of Claremont so that no longer does a religious institution have to get a conditional use permit anywhere in the city. So we're excited about that. And Claremont, folks, Claremont is no Plano, Texas, okay? I used to live there as well. Claremont is a challenging town, but their city council looked at the law, they looked at the case law, and they agreed. And that's why twice the American Bar Association has flown me in, and I made them pay for it too, by the way, to address the attorneys working for city governments on land use zoning with regards to the RLUIPA statute. And so we're making progress, folks, and we are making headway because the basic message is, look, you can listen to me now and listen to us our message, or you can listen to it in a courtroom. And I think they understood that. Also number 3 is the source of funding. How do these liberal groups get a lot of their funding to elect politicians that do all this stuff? Unions. Yeah, you guys know about it. Unions. And they force people in a tyrannical way to give their money to something they don't even believe in. Yeah, that's right. And it's how many people have to pay union dues here? I'm sure there's some people do, or in about kind of bondage with this kind of group. Come on, anyone? Okay, well, very good. We're going to liberate you, by the way, before the night's over. And no altar call. Don't worry, it's different. Okay. But here's the thing: is that there's already something that's going to be on the ballot, dealing with the stop special interests, and it's going to help specifically in California for union members not to have their dues go to the political purposes of the union in California. It requires them to opt in willingly every year in writing. Fantastic measure. Something else, though, we are doing at Pacific Justice Institute is under Title VII. Under federal law, every union worker in America is already entitled and protected under federal law to have every penny of their union dues to never go to their union ever again, every penny, and have all of it given to a charity instead. Now, some of you are saying, Henry's saying, Mildred, did he say what I thought he just said? Yes. 100% of the union dues, agency fee, all of it, never going to union again, all of it diverted to a charity in agreement with the person's faith and conviction. That's protected under federal civil rights statute, Title VII. It applies to every union worker in every state and every union. The problem is only 1 in 1,000 are aware of it. We at Pacific Justice in 2010 helped over 200 break away. Last year, that more than doubled to 400. This year, we're hopefully going to be initiating a major campaign that will educate every union worker, Lord willing, of their rights to do this and see a major change in the landscape so they can no longer steal money from we the people to fund things that we the people don't agree with. So I'm excited about that. So if you know people in the union, let me know. If you know people who are interested in this campaign specifically, let me know because we're on the groundbreaking form of it. Number 4 action item, and that is leave no victim on the side of the road. It's real easy, and I've seen some people have this attitude, organizations. They only want the high precedent-setting cases. They want to cherry pick just those big, high-profile cases. But I'm going to tell you something. I think that in the long term has some real major fallacies to it because all it takes is for just a few individuals who may not be quite as significant from a profile perspective or precedent, but just a few individuals be left on the side of the road. And what does that do? That sends a chilling message, ripples a message to everyone that you too could be left on the side of the road. And so you better back down, you better not exercise your rights. We at Pacific Justice are committed to making sure under our scope of law that no one is left ever on the side of the road. And that's why last year alone we handled roughly 4,000 requests for assistance without charge. We're committed to do that. We're committed to do that in this community and across the United States as necessary. So we need to have that attitude. When we hear seeing injustice that takes place, we need to get involved. Siskiyou County, where's she? Is she up here or where'd she go? Yay. That's for real. I was on a speaking tour through Redding, Wairika, Crescent City, and someplace in Oregon in between. It's for real. There's nothing hype about what she said. And we need to get behind those things when we see them. We can't just say, well, that's a bad thing. No, we need to get behind them. We need to make the phone calls. We need to write the letters. We need to do what we can on the internet, through Facebook and other things, to enunciate these atrocities. And because we now have the power through the internet and through radio and other means to actually communicate our message. We didn't have that 30, 40 years ago. We actually have the power to do it. And I'm excited about that. And we need to get involved. That's just one example. The others up here, everything that was mentioned tonight was credible. And 5 is we need to hold all politicians accountable. They need to recognize that we the people will not allow party labels to interfere with them being held accountable. Hey, I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative. I was the youngest precinct chairman for Ronald Reagan when he was running for president. I couldn't vote, but I was precinct chairman, okay, in Texas. I mean, I'm a hardcore. But that said, when they're in office and they take an oath of office, they must be held accountable to we the people. Period. I once was speaking to, I was actually in D.C., and a group of us from legal organizations were together, and Attorney General Ed Meese, who's the chairman of our advisory board, that's my name dropping, Attorney General Ed Meese. Okay, dropping, okay. Anyway, he still serves, okay. Anyway, we brought in a gentleman from Congress to come and address the group. And he said, you know, this is after the 2010 election, he says, you know, I want you to know that we're really serious in the House to make cuts. We're going to cut $150 billion from the budget. And I looked, yeah, that's right, And I looked around and everyone's sort of thinking, okay, all right. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute, 150 billion? That's not even the deficit. It's a deficit over $1 trillion. So everybody says, excuse me, I just want to make something clear. With all due respect, I'm the president of the Pacific Justice Institute, but I'm also an active member and advocate for the Tea Party movement. And I want to make something really clear. The loyalty of the Tea Party movement to the Republican Party, it's about this deep. And if you think that cutting $150 billion from the budget is enough to pacify the people of America, all I can say is you'll see a different outcome 2 years from now unless you make real reform and real cuts in the budget. And he understood that. And Attorney General Ed Meese backed it up, which was really nice having someone like that. But the bottom line is, folks, we must hold them accountable. Once again, I want to remind you to be sure and fill out these blue sheets. I would mean a great deal to me personally. You don't forget yet. I'm almost done. Anyway, please fill out these blue sheets. So and then when you do, just put them on that table in the back there next to our other materials. I'd love to have that. Also, if you want to, you can support our work. There's another brochure you can fill out in the back over there too as well. And I want to remind you also about the Celebration of Justice, so you guys can attend that. That means a great deal. You know, right now our nation's under a great crisis. As I've noticed this evening, news flash, Israel hasn't done the bombing, but the report is that they are moving in that direction. And we have some great crises economically our nation's facing in many, many ways. The good news is, in order for foundational change to take place in our country historically, those times of foundational change, or for good or for bad, were times of crises. We have, at this time in our nation, an incredible opportunity given to us to make major foundational fundamental changes in the right direction. I'm excited about it. I'm not moving to Idaho, and neither should you. We can't take back America. We can't take back California, and I want us to do that because I know we can have that potential. The bell tolled in 2010, and unlike other times when the bell tolled, we didn't go home. In 2012, we're not going home. In 2014, we're not going home. until we take back this country. God bless you all, and let's keep up the work. Thank you very much.
All right, I know this has been a marathon session, but we've heard from a lot of great speakers, and we have one more for you tonight. He's an educator from the Los Angeles area, and he's a candidate for U.S. Senate against Dianne Feinstein. So please give a warm welcome to Rabbi Shefrin.
Raise your hand if you're still awake. Good. I was wondering there for a second. Ladies and gentlemen, what I have to say to you takes 5 minutes. Good news, right? By the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong. That's where it started. Everything that you heard here tonight, there's some people that are young, they don't remember that song. I do. I was on my way to Woodstock and a funny thing happened. I had a flat tire and I didn't make it. I was 17 years old. Perhaps that's why I'm such a troublemaker and a hard-headed conservative to this day. Now, fast forward, actually go backwards. I'm a second-generation Angelino. I remember my father, he should rest in peace. Can I use the microphone there? I'm too tall for this thing. Are we good? My father took us to Yosemite Valley starting in the mid-50s, late 50s. No rangers, no cops. We just drove right through that Wawana tunnel. We parked anywhere we wanted. Abundant firewood and the fire falls. Raise your hand if you remember this. Light the fire falls. And they would tip over that huge cauldron of embers over Glacier Point. Do they do that nowadays? It's over. Fast forward. Here's a funny story. Fast forward. A year ago, I was walking with my fiancée on the beach at Malibu. It was 40 degrees out, major storm, wind caps, 30-mile-an-hour winds. Not even the seagulls were on the beach. So I lit up a cigar. The cop walked over the sand, 150 yards, got sand all over his brand new shoes, proceeded to tell me, Rabbi, are you aware that there's no smoking allowed at the beach? I'm like, I could barely hear him. I was so cold. I had earmuffs. I had a scarf, I had down jacket, earmuffs. What? We are losing our freedom. I can't stand people that don't like secondhand smoke. And if you don't like secondhand smoke, by God, you're not an American. And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, what you don't know. I've been teaching your children for 25 years in our government schools. You want to know why we're losing our freedom? It didn't start with the legislature and Agenda 21. It started with the communist inculcation of your children to brainwash them, to rip God out of the schools, to rip the Ten Commandments out of the schools, and know that the revisionists have changed our history books. Instead of a sentence about Muhammad, the pedophile maniac that he is, some history books have been transformed into major propaganda pieces for Islam, and Jesus gets one sentence. You want to know why we're losers? We are paying for it with your taxes, just like these gentlemen have done. We are paying for Agenda 21. We're paying for this girl's parents to lose their cattle farm, God forbid. We are paying for a radical, progressive agenda. This Occupy movement, connect the dots. You will one day back your car out of the garage, and you're going to find 10 people standing there in front of your door. You're not moving, sir, unless you give us a check. That's coming down the pike. This is Communism 101. I say what you're thinking. I am the Jewish Rambo. That is going to give Barbara Streisand and Steven Spielberg ulcers. I want you to consider there's 6 people beside myself running for this office. That means we're dividing the cake up 6 different ways. Does anybody here think that the establishment candidate proposed by the elitists in Sacramento is going to beat Dianne Feinstein? We had Terminator 1, Jerkinator 2, losers. And I'm not a loser. And there's people here that know me. And before you leave tonight, I want to share something with you from my heart that will tell you why I am here to save America from itself. We're too drunk. We're watching too much TV. We're worried and titillated about sex. I wish we spent 1,000th of the time worried about our sexual dysfunction and worry about the communist scum that are destroying the minds of your children. I haven't watched TV in 45 years. I have no clue, except when I go to a bar or a friend's house and I see the filth. And listen, I'm the surfing rabbi, okay? I started surfing Malibu in 1962, and I'm good. Yeah, I'm not here to talk to you about that. I love surfing, and I love California. I love our beaches, and I'm a pioneer. I'm one of those longboarders that you see cruising down the freeway with those 12-foot boards. I live and breathe freedom. Don't you dare tell me to put my cigar out. But let me tell you something. We're going to lose our country unless we snap out of it. Because I'm not jaded and I'm not drunk. By the way, I love this with the Texas, what Brad was saying about I was thinking to myself, the church, alcohol, a bar, are we now going to be busted for praying while drinking? These are communist rabble. None of my opponents is a veteran of the Army. I asked my main opponent, Elizabeth Empton, now you say you've studied Middle East history? What's the weapon of choice of our enemy? AK-47, she couldn't tell me. We are in trouble because we have a president that bows down to a Saudi tyrant. That's where this all started. And a drone falls in Iran. We have to ask Iran. We don't ask. You give us that damn drone back, or within 24 hours, no water or food is going into your country. That's the language that they understand in the Middle East. And I lived in the Middle East. And if they think that you're weak, you are dead. And when the bombs start falling on Iran, and a nation who for 2,000 years has enjoyed pogroms, inquisitions, crusades, intifadas, don't tell that nation, you do what we tell you to do. Don't you dare do that. But what have you done instead? You've created a climate where we are afraid of 7th century maniacs that live in caves. And this is the problem. And I say to you, if you didn't know what was the situation, tell it to Patton. He'll tell you what to do. And like my father, he should rest in peace, said, you don't like it? Tell it to the Marines. And if I seem a little bit bombastic tonight, everybody here that knows me will tell you, that's just how I am. Because I feel the heat. I'm that frog that's, when they jacked up the temperature, I'm the one frog that's the squeaky wheel, or the squeaky frog. I'm the one that's here to tell you, I will out communists. And to my friends that are gays and lesbians, God bless you. I love you all. And I do have many friends like that. But the gay, radical, gay, lesbian agenda will destroy our country. Nobody tells me what to do in my bedroom, and I won't tell you what to do. And to those people south of the border, and I'm talking about Felipe Calderon. And by the way, my profession is I'm a language teacher. I speak fluent Spanish. I lived in Mexico for 5 years. And I speak better Spanish than the people that mow your lawn. And I'm here to tell you, we have nothing to say to the radical pathway to citizenship group. They don't want citizenship. This is theirs. It's called, in Yiddish, La Reconquista. We have nothing to talk about, and we don't have to be ashamed that we love our English language. We don't have to feel bad that we have a border. We don't have to feel bad that we came from Europe, primarily a Judeo-Christian ethos of Europeans that came here for religious freedom, and my great-grandparents from Russia, who were 1 foot ahead of the czars who wanted to murder them. They didn't come here for shovel-ready jobs. They found themselves in the Bronx working 18 hours a day, sewing machines, so that their children would understand the American dream. And my grandparents spoke fluent English, always followed the law. We've outlawed tuberculosis about 20 years ago in this country. There was no tuberculosis in America. Now, it's all over the map. We are being sucker punched because, let me tell you why. Fasten your safety belts. A lot of you like what I say, but this is going to shock you. It's because you're white and Christian is why you're getting screwed. People say to me, Rabbi, you're an Orthodox Jewish rabbi. Why are you in bed with the Tea Party people and the evangelicals and the this and the that, the pro-America people? Because this is the only country in the world where somebody like me can walk around without getting ambushed. Nowhere else in the world but America. And I'm not going to stand by while the elite group of low-level communist scum take away and chip away at the foundation of the liberties. There are individual liberties of this nation. Day by day it gets worse. And I want to tell you something. If you want to send a message to Obama, if you want to send a message to Obama that those progressivists will never, ever forget, you send me to Congress. They won't know which window to jump out of. Because the last thing they want is a Jew that's a conservative. I am asking you, there's 6 other people here, not here, but they're running, my opponents. None of them are going to be taken seriously. None of them has 30 or 40 or 50 million dollars to go against Dianne Feinstein. And by the way, she's not Jewish. Tell your Jewish friends to send their checks to me. None of them is going to do it. We don't want any more John McCains. We're sick of the Terminators. And what was that lady's name that ran for governor again? That multi-millionaire. What was she? Meg. I almost forgot her name. How could I have forgotten her name? $160 million against a hippie from the 60s. $180 million. It's not a question of money. And when people ask me, Rabbi, with all due respect, how are you qualified to beat Dianne Feinstein? And my simple answer is, why, I'm a community activist. America is tired, broke, sick, and we need to revive America. This is not the America that I grew up in. I used to hitchhike with my 10-foot Dewey Weber longboard from the San Fernando Valley. I was 12 years old, 30 miles away to Malibu. No rapists, no pornographers. And I got home hitchhiking the same way. 12 years old. Would you let your kid do that today? We have lost our minds. I stand for clarity and sobriety. And I say we judge you by the friends that you hang out with. And my favorite friend in America is Sheriff Joe Arpaio. And when I'm asked, well, Rabbi, sum up for us in one sentence the essence of your campaign. Could you please read this to the people here?
Do I believe in gun control? Yeah, I use both hands.
I want you to take one of these home before you go. I want you to take this book, which represents 25 years of dealing with Maoists, Leninists, Stalinists, Trotskyites, both black and brown. And why, am I asked, do I not have tenure after 25 years? They're never going to give tenure to a guy like me. Are you kidding? It'll never happen. I got moved around from school to school. You have to be in one school for 2 years. At the end of the first year, they moved me to a different school. But guess what? I got to know LA schools better than any teacher. I taught at all of them. And I know a communist a mile away. And I'm going to be your proxy. I'm going to be the guy that I'm going to be your fall guy. You help me. I don't care about the money. I don't care about anything. It's not for nothing that Congressman Tom McClintock and Dana Rohrabacher support me and understand me, and they like me, and they know I can be a leader. And I'm telling you, there's 6 other people that are running against me. You will see them. There's some candidate forums that are going to be set up shortly. You will get a chance to watch us in action. I lived in Germany as a foreign exchange student. I was at that wall. Who speaks German? Raise your hand. It's called a Schussbefehl. A Schussbefehl means an order to shoot. I saw East Germans with my own eyes trying to escape the hellhole of the Deutsche Demokratische Republik, the German Democratic Republic. All the Nazis call themselves Democrats. Have you ever noticed that? It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. South and North Vietnam, they were also a republic of Democrats. Venezuela, they're Democrats down there too. They don't ride donkeys, but they're probably Democrats. And I saw with my own eyes what communism has done. I lived in El Salvador during the military junta. I understand freedom better than any of my opponents. I want your vote. I want your endorsement. And I'm going to help you so we can all live the dream, the American dream, where they don't tell us how to flush or white light bulb. This is what we need for our country. God bless you. Please see me at the back. I want to autograph a book for you. I need your support. There's one, my mantra is I want 1 million Americans to each give me $5. I'll win this campaign. Here's your opportunity to save your nation and to help your country. Buy this book before you leave today. I'll sign it. You will never read a book like this. There's people here that have read it. They'll tell you. God bless you all, and God bless America.
How about a round of applause for all of our great speakers tonight? Now there's one person that is going I want to bring up here now, and that's Christina Mikas, because without Christina, this wouldn't have happened. She's a tireless patriot, and and you all know and love her as your advocate here.
I don't do compliments well. Thank you all very much. I can't do this without you, okay? So understand that. It's all of us together standing shoulder to shoulder. I may be the grunt in the background, cracking the whip to you guys. But again, this forum couldn't have been put on without all these wonderful people participating, all of our volunteers that did so much to help. I just want to thank everybody, because this was an awesome, awesome event. I know it was pretty depressing information, but on the flip side, I don't want you to get sad, and I don't want you to get depressed. I want you to get angry, and I want you to stand, and I want you to fight, and I want you to sign up and join us, and let's take back our country, our state, our cities, our towns. I know a lot of you are listening to Lee Rayburn on the radio. You know what's happening in our cities. He's exposing corruption on a daily basis. Every city council, every mayor, every here, every there. Corrupt, corrupt, corrupt. It's got to stop. And who is it incumbent upon to stop it but us? So we have got to stand, people, together. We can't wait any longer. If Obama gets elected in November, do you realize America is over that fast? Do you realize that, really? So we have got to stand, and we have got to fight, and this is what we're going to do. And right now, I want to have the honor of introducing patriots that are going to put themselves forward on the line and run for office. They don't have money, they don't have fame, they don't have fortune, they don't have anything but us. And you know what? We can get them across the finish line. I know we're not rich, and I know their economy's bad, and I know all of this, but you know what? We have got to do it. We have to pledge our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor, or we are not going to have an America for our children, and they're going to live under not socialism like Europe, but communism like Venezuela and Cuba. So let's get serious, people, and stop playing games. I don't want anyone going home and sitting on their couch and watching TV. We don't have time. I haven't watched, I'm like Rabbi Schifrin. I haven't seen TV in so long other than Glenn Beck and all the other depressing stuff. So I don't have time for that. I have time to save my country. My father gave 30 years of his life to this country, and I am carrying on the torch. So I want to introduce at this time the patriots who are seeking office in this November election. And you've already heard why this is so important. So please make a point to support these patriots. Dig in your last dime, whatever it takes, so we can begin to restore America and stop Agenda 21 and all its sustainable tentacles. Please again welcome Rabbi Schifrin, and do all you can to support him, please. And thank you, Rabbi, for coming tonight. He drove all the way from LA just to be with us. And we wish him Godspeed in all of his travels and in all of his town halls and all of his candidate forums. We will be praying for him. I also want to thank Ted Cruz, the senator who's running for in Texas against Kay Bailey Hutchinson. Yes, ma'am. Ted is an awesome guy, and we ran out of time. He wrote us a statement, but he is dead set against this agenda. He's been fighting for it. He actually spoke in front of the Supreme Court. So I just want you all, when you see something come around from Jim DeMint saying support this conservative senator, dig in your wallets and support him. Don't go out and get a Starbucks or whatever. Go support these candidates. People, we've got to. I don't want to see you giving the money to anybody but our people. We've got to take back America like George Washington and the rest. They gave everything. And are we any less that we can't? So support Ted Cruz and these other senators that Senator DeMint is telling us to support around the country. Okay? And we've got to take back the Senate. I want you to focus on that, because if without that Senate, it's not going to matter if we have the presidency. We've got to take back that Senate so we can overturn the President's Council on Sustainable Development that was implemented by Clinton and Obama's Rural Council. We've got to stop those in their tracks. Then locally, we also have some wonderful people running for office. We have Corky, our very own Corky Emmett, who is running for State Assembly District 56. And we are going to do all we can to support Corky. Shelley Milne, my other half, my sister in my heart, she's running for City Council in Hemet. And we're going to do all we can to support Shelley, okay? We also have Lane Schneider, who is running for City Council in Redlands. Yay! And she's also running for Central Committee. We also have people here that are running for Central Committee. We're going to take over Central Committee too. Yes, we are. All right? So people have, I'm sorry about this microphone. People have petitions all over the place here. Please sign their petitions if you're in their district. It's so, so important. We've got to take back the Central Committee. This is how we're going to take back our country and our state and our cities, by taking over these positions. People wonder where the Tea Party went. They go, where'd the Tea Party go? Oh, the Tea Party's gone. No, we're not gone. We're busy. Okay? So I just ask you all to support these fine patriots in this election cycle and others that we will be discussing in the future. Elections matter, and who we elect matters more. So God bless you all. Elect the right candidates. Search in your soul. Get down on your knees and pray and seek God's advice as to who to support. Okay? God bless you all. Thank you for coming. And God bless America. You are an awesome audience.